Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's public input session. My name is David Momora. I'm the chair of the New York State Independent Redistricting Commission. I want to welcome everyone to our second listening session, this time for the great borough of Queens. I wish we could be having dim sum in Flushing or butter tea in Jackson Heights, but we'll need to postpone that to our in-person hearings in the fall. First off, I want to thank everyone so much for coming today. I want to acknowledge my fellow commissioners who are here, Commissioner Ross Brady, Commissioner Ivelisse Cuevas Molina, Commissioner Willis Stevens, and Commissioner John Flateau. So 5 commissioners are present today. Second, I want to thank the men and women behind the curtain who are making all of this magic work. Co-Executive Director Karen Blatt, Deputy Co-Executive Director Isis McIntosh Green, Director of Public Engagement Asia Badi, Assistant Director of Engagement Miranda Goodwin Robb, Data Manager Jonathan Rivas, Co-Executive Director Douglas Bregel, Deputy Co-Executive Director Kevin Murphy, Assistant Director of Engagement Danielle Futia, and Data Manager David Schaefer. Today we are embarking on New York's first ever public redistricting process, where average New Yorkers have the opportunity to weigh in on their district lines. In terms of our calendar, we'll be having a series of sessions as part of our listening tour between now and mid-August, all across the state. On August 16th, the Census Bureau will release New York's redistricting census data. We will then release our initial proposed set of lines on September 15th, followed by another round of hearings soliciting public input on our initial proposals in October, followed by our presenting our proposals to the legislature in January. Please note, for those of you who have not been able to sign up for today's session, we will have a catch-up session for the entire state in mid-August prior to our beginning to draw lines. So if you did not have the time to prepare for today, please join us then. In addition, whether or not you speak before the commission, we actively encourage you to submit written materials to the commission. Only so much can be said in 3 minutes, so please feel free to submit additional materials, be it letters, maps, photos of communities, whatever you think the commission can use to best draw lines that capture your communities. Some logistical points. Each speaker will be allocated 3 minutes. We have on our Zoom a timer which will indicate how much time every person has remaining. That timer will buzz at 30 seconds and then at 0 seconds. We will mute speakers if they exceed their time. Commissioners will not be asking questions. All of this session, as well as all written materials submitted to the commission, will be posted on our website at nyrc.gov. As we've discussed, we are asking the public to provide input on 2 things before we start putting pen to paper and drawing lines. First, we are asking for information on your communities as they relate to redistricting. Tell us about your neighborhood, your religious group, your school district, your village, and why as a community you should be kept together for redistricting. This is what is known in redistricting circles as a community of interest. Second, we are also asking for your input on how your present districts can be improved. Again, I want to thank everyone involved, but especially members of the public for making your voices heard. This is the first time that everyday New Yorkers will be able to provide input on the lines, and I think I speak for all of my fellow commissioners when I say we intend to make the most of it. This process will only work because of your help. So thank you for joining us. I'll pass this on now to Commissioner Brady. Commissioner Brady, would you like to say a few words?
Oh, thank you. Very briefly, thank you, Chairman Momora, and to all my fellow commissioners and all the behind-the-scene people that make this work. Again, to reiterate that, just so glad to be part of this, constitutional first independent commission. I said it before, it's the People's Commission. Again, get all your material in. If you don't get it in now, get it in before the next round. There will be another round once again we get pen to paper and get the maps drawn. But this is really an opportunity that you should take. I'm glad to see a robust list for Queens. That means I know Dr. Flateau will agree with me as a person from Brooklyn. We expect Brooklyn to do just as well, right? But the most important part of this is that we're here to listen. So rather than me speak, I hand it back to you. Thank you very much.
Commissioners Flateau, Stevens, Cuevas Molina, would you like to speak briefly? Yes, Commissioner Flateau.
Yes, very briefly. Our IRC stands for your voting rights and fair redistricting. We look for your input, your comments and recommendations to help guide our work as we go forward. Thank you for exercising your civic duty, and thank you for participating in this process.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Cuevas Molina, would you like to speak? Nope. And Willis, I think I saw you wave away. All right. So just in terms of timeline, the Great Borough of Queens has over 100 people signed up. So we currently we expect to go until at least 7 o'clock. So if you want to stay with us the whole time, grab your Nutri-Grain bars and your water bottle. So with that, I think we are good to go.
Commissioner Imamura, can you pause
Yes.
for a few seconds?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, go ahead.
So yes, I think we are good to go. Is there anything we need, Karen or Miranda, on your end before we start?
Miranda, are you good? Okay.
Yeah, everyone, we're ready to go. Sorry about that. Amelia Dickhaden, you'll be invited to speak.
Hi, Amelia, welcome.
Hi there. Thank you, members of the commission, for having me. I did not expect to go first. I will be brief. There are many people after me who will be doing a better job than I will. My name is Amelia DeCudden. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm a resident of Sunnyside in Queens. I also serve as the Democratic District Leader for Assembly District 37 Part A, which encompasses the parts of the district which are in Sunnyside, Northern LIC, and up to Astoria houses. I also serve on the Democratic State Committee for the whole Assembly District. And so I'm speaking here in that capacity as someone whose responsibility it is in this party position to promote engagement in the democratic process, to talk about how keeping our neighborhoods together, especially in contrast with the lines as they're currently drawn, makes that job easier, and it makes it easier for people to be engaged with the representatives. Currently, Assembly District 37 splits Sunnyside into one big chunk and some small chunks into 80-30. It stretches all the way down into Ridgewood, but doesn't keep Ridgewood whole, pulling out a section of it and lumping it together with these other parts of the districts, like Long Island City, Sunnyside, connecting downward. There's no transit connections, and the communities generally do not see each other as part of the same political bloc. And then it stretches up all the way into Astoria houses, splitting Astoria apart at that point, like a small sliver, like up to the river, in order to connect Astoria houses with Ravenswood and Koenigsberg, which has a certain benefit for keeping those communities together, but does so in a way that keeps them together in order to dilute their voices, in my opinion, while also keeping Astoria separated. So having all of these neighborhoods split apart in these various manners makes it difficult for them to come together and speak together as a community on issues that affect those neighborhoods specifically, as well as making it so that their representatives, primarily I would say at the assembly levels where the lines are most wonky, and that's what you're concerned with, it makes it difficult for those representatives to be effective voices for their communities, because they'll focus on where they have a larger portion, and if there are like little segments drawn off, there's less of an incentive, of no fault of their own, in my opinion, for them to focus on those communities. So I would, ask that the commission consider keeping, first Sunnyside as it's defined, I think, by the New York City Planning Commission and some other groups together as a neighborhood, or potentially bringing it together with all of Woodside and not splitting that apart. Splitting it away from the Ridgewood section, which pulls away to the south, and then as it moves northward, instead of going in like one sliver or another, moving northward uniformly, so that the parts of the neighborhood to the north don't get split apart. I would also suggest for the Senate district that overlays that share similar boundaries, that similar considerations be made. Even though in light of the fact that it's larger and there's to be more population accounted for, I do believe that as it moves southward, there is just a split in terms of demographics and neighborhood identity that make it difficult for the representative, to be an effective voice for those communities, out of no fault of their own. I'm not sure how much time I have left. I'm not seeing a timer on my screen.
I apologize. The timer was kicked out of the Zoom meeting.
Okay. Yeah. Isis, you were monitoring. How much time does Amelia have left? Isis? You're on mute, Isis.
seconds.
30 seconds?
So I'll just real quickly to end, like I said, keeping these communities together is important. I would also add that to whatever extent, keeping the congressional districts together is possible, that would also be a benefit. Although currently Sunnyside and Long Island City are within themselves kept together, I do think that Western Queens as a whole, Sunnyside, LIC, and then up to Astoria, is also a coherent political bloc that I think should be together. And I would also recommend looking at these current city council district lines as well as the community district lines for some, inspiration for how those lines could be drawn, as I believe that as they're currently drawn at those two levels, they're actually, pretty coherent. Thank you.
Thank you, Amelia. Really appreciate you coming. So can we test the timer before we proceed? Did we lose Miranda?
Yes, we had a technical difficulty. She was kicked out of the chat, but I am monitoring the time and I'll call out a 30 seconds for the next person.
Okay, commissioners, is everyone all right with proceeding with that for now? Okay, great. All right, well, thank you, Amelia. I really appreciate your coming. If we could go to the next speaker then.
Great, the next speaker will be John P. Albert.
John, are you in the ether? Because we do not see you. Oh, there you are, John. Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you, but
okay. Yeah, try turning your video on, John.
Hi,
John.
Can you see me? Okay.
Yes, we can see you.
Sorry.
Yes.
All right. Hi, my name is John Albert, and I'm with an organization called Taking Our Seat. Commissioners, thank you so much for this opportunity to speak before you. What I'm most encouraged about is how many of my neighbors are here. That's what's really encouraging. I think we're definitely going to beat Brooklyn for sure. So I know there's a friendly rivalry. I just want to talk about an area of Queens that we called what we call Hillside Avenue, and the Hillside Avenue corridor specifically. And the area that we're talking about starts at the Van Wyck Expressway. That's how we say it in Queens. And we go move all the way down to Nassau County. That area is not just a road. It is a spine of a community. And that community is predominantly home to people from the Asian continent and the Asian subcontinent. The eastern part of that area on Hillside Avenue was home or is currently home to a significant Indian American population that came to the neighborhood in the 70s to work in the medical field around LHA Hospital. That district now is, that area now is split among 3 assembly districts. And so it's Assembly District 24 and 26 and 33, I believe. If you travel west down Hillside Avenue and you get to the Van Wyck, for some reason, District 24 traverses the Van Wyck and moves into Richmond Hill. What we are asking is that that area, the Richmond Hill neighborhood, be separate and apart from anything on the eastern side of the Van Wyck. We believe that those are two distinct neighborhoods that deserve their own assembly districts, and they have enough population to be the locus of two different assembly districts. I'm going to share my screen very briefly so I can talk about the problems with the Senate aspect of it. So very quickly, hopefully this works. I hope you can see my screen. This is the assembly districts that I was talking about. As you can tell here, this is 24 that I mentioned, 26 and 33. All of those should be kept together to keep the community of interest in this area around LIJ whole and together. And I just want to show you the Senate problem here on the western end of that same district, if you bear with me. This is the western end of Hillside Avenue. You can see that the lines just make completely, just don't make any sense. And I think it's evident here, and I'm glad that I'm able to show you in a map what the problem is, because then that'll save me time on your clock. So I will end there. I think you can do justice for these communities. There are South Asian communities, there are, and a very diverse community, particularly here in Briarwood. It's a new and growing Bangladeshi community that really needs your attention. Many of my neighbors from Richmond Hill are signed up to testify, so I will spare you my testimony about Richmond Hill, but I think there are opportunities for you guys to do justice at Richmond Hill as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. Really appreciate your coming. So,
great. Next, we will be joined by Maria Coffer.
Hello. Oh, hold on.
Hi, Maria. How are you? You can unmute your video if you like. Okay, there we are.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. My name is Maria Coffer, and since 1972, I've been a New York City resident, living mostly in Queens, but also in Manhattan and Brooklyn. My family immigrated to the US from the Philippines just 4 months before President Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law. My husband and I bought our co-op apartment in Forest Hills, Queens in 1992. And Forest Hills in central Queens County has been the only home that our son has ever known. What always struck me about Forest Hills and central Queens in general is that people who grew up here tend to return after they complete their formal education and raise their own children here in the neighborhood. What we love about Forest Hills and the adjacent neighborhoods of Rego Park, Kew Gardens, North Richmond Hill, and Eastern Elmhurst, Northeastern Middle Village is that there are copious and sundry public transportation options, parks, entertainment venues, restaurants, shopping centers, public schools, houses of worship, government offices, and private businesses and office buildings, all within walking or biking distance of our own homes. Additionally, there's a very active civic and community engagement by the diverse communities that reside in central Queens. And by diverse, I mean diversity in ethnicity, race, religion, socioeconomic status, sexual identity, sexual orientation, and age groups. However, my neighbors and I have found it challenging and at times ultimately disenfranchising to advocate for community interests such as fair student funding for public schools, reproductive rights, immigrant rights, trans rights, elder parole justice, and voting rights, because our community's electoral districts have been drawn so that there are 4 state senators and 3 state assembly representatives for central Queens, 7 state representatives, and only 1 of them has a district office in central Queens, 1. It is absurd that our friends and neighbors, some of whom live across the street or 1 block over from each other, whose children go to the same schools, who shop in the same places and visit the same restaurants, that we live in a very compact geographic area, we have to dilute our numbers when advocating for our neighborhood communities because we are represented by different elected officials, almost all of whom spend very little time in Central Queens. That's why I became a member of the Central Queens Redistricting Coalition. Our coalition is a nonpartisan neighborhood-based effort to provide a voice to the diverse center of Queens, resulting in fair representation for all. And I thank you, commissioners, and the staff for organizing these hearings so quickly after the release of funds for your activities only last month. It demonstrates a good faith commitment to truly listening to and factoring in input from the public when you embark on the important once in a decade impactful activity of drawing the electoral district lines that will affect the everyday lives of New Yorkers across our state. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria. I think you are the only person who has complimented our speed in this regard, so thank you.
I really appreciate it, and I hope to be back in a few months. Thank you so much. And
See you in
our
October.
coalition's happy to help you. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we get our next person, Isis or Miranda?
Next, we have Aminta Kilawan. Aminta, you can speak.
All
Hi,
right.
Aminta.
Hello, I hope you all can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Wonderful. Okay, I am going to start. Good afternoon, esteemed members of the Independent Redistricting Commission. My name is Aminta Kilawan Narain. I'm a lawyer, an organizer, and the founder and director of South Queens Women's March. We're a local grassroots gender justice organization. I won't get into all of our programs. You'll have my written testimony for that. But one of our pillars is building political power from the ground up in our community, raising our voices to educate our communities as well as decision-making bodies about how we've been historically oppressed. And that includes placed in multiple districts that dilute our power. To that end, South Queens Women's March is a proud member of APA Voices Redistricting Task Force. Much of our work, which has grown exponentially over our short year plus of existence, has been based in the Richmond Hill, South Ozone Park, and Ozone Park neighborhoods of South Queens, home to a vibrant and sprawling Asian American population, specifically South Asians, mainly Punjabi, and Indo-Caribbeans, that census data unfortunately doesn't account for. For clarification's sake, Indo-Caribbeans, like myself, are those who migrated from India to the Caribbean as indentured servants in the early 1800s to places like Guyana, Trinidad, and Suriname. And these communities have been gerrymandered for far too long. I began to organize in my community a decade ago during the last redistricting cycle. That was the first time I ever testified before any governing body at all. 10 years later, I find myself asking for the same thing. Don't divide us, please. Keep our communities of interest together. If you look at the district lines at every level of government in these neighborhoods, you're going to see a blatant disregard for the Voting Rights Act. Absolutely running afoul of what that stands for, not compact nor contiguous by any means. And this is particularly egregious at the state assembly level, where we're divided into at least 7 districts, 23, 24, 27, 28, 31, 32, and 38. The way the lines are drawn divides and dilutes our ability to be a strong voice in our community. We've been split into smaller pieces for far too long. Many people in our community aren't even able to identify who their elected officials are, and that's because the lines are not drawn with regard for them. Our communities are distinct from the areas they're lumped with, different from areas like Howard Beach to the south, Jamaica and St. Albans to the east, or Glendale and Maspeth to the north. We have one of the largest concentrated immigrant communities in all of New York City, yet people like me have no real representation because we're artificially splintered. We're linked by strong ties, culinary, familial, religious, cultural, educational, economic, and more. We take the same trains and buses. We go to the same schools, go to the same gurdwaras, masjids, same ethnic grocery stores. But we have a hard time advocating for ourselves. And as an organizer myself, it's particularly challenging when I have to develop relationships with so many different elected officials instead of going to a few for just a fraction of what the resources that we truly should be getting as a community. So for me, this is not about identity politics. It's about protecting disenfranchised populations. It's about eradicating voter dilution. It's about community empowerment. Thank you to the entire commission for listening to me today. Thank you to your staff for all the work you've put in for this hearing. And as we say always at South Queens Women's March, our voice is our power. Please redraw these lines to uplift our voices. Thank you.
Thank you, Aminta. Miranda,
Next, we have Anicia Ayon. Anicia, you'll be invited to speak.
Hi, Anicia, how are you?
Hi, sorry, a little difficulty. Good afternoon. I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to participate in today's hearing regarding the redistricting of Queens County, especially Central Queen. My name is Anicia Young. I have resided in Rego Park for the past 52 years, where I have raised my children and grandchildren. For the majority of these 50 years plus, I have been extremely active in my community and have been a voice of the people and for the people. In March 2019, I joined the Borough President Queens Complete County Initiative to help inform my neighbors and fellow Queens residents about the importance of filing the census and for the future of our community. The result in my region and beyond were positive and view it as a great success and a personal accomplishment. After the completion of the census, next step of the redistricting opened my eyes, and I have realized that the outlines of the Central Queens will be gravely impacted. Family, school, business, and places of worship will be negatively impacted by the lines drawn with this with this plan. Right now, we have 4 senators and 3 assemblymen that they are representing Central Queens. The district needs senators and assembly members that are familiar with our region. Some of them, they don't even have office in our region, our people and our community. We have neighborhood representatives today that have gathered here on behalf of a new formed Central Queens Redistricting Coalition to ask you to reconsider your maps and your plans to draw new maps. We need you to consider our diverse community, including we have a high percentage of senior citizens, people who have lived here and dedicated the best of their years to this community. Let us not forget them and all the multicultural faces that represent Rego Park. In closing, I am here as a voice of the people and for the people. I am a Cuban American citizen who fought to live in this amazing country and neighborhood. As a senior citizen, a mother and a grandmother, I ask you to reconsider the redistricting and the redrawing of the map to include our diversity and select one senator, one assembly member that respect and cares for our Central Queens community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Nisi. I really appreciate your comment.
Next, we have Raj Korpan. Raj, you'll be invited to speak.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Hi, Raj, how are you?
Good. I'll get right into it. Hello, I want to start by saying thank you to the commissioners for organizing this meeting to receive public testimony. My name is Raj Korpan. I live in Rego Park. I grew up on the North Shore of Suffolk County on Long Island and have lived in Queens for 8 years. I'm a proud graduate of the City University of New York, where I earned my doctorate in computer science. I deeply believe in fair representation for all. Our districts should represent our community, and voters should pick their representative, not representatives picking their voters. When my husband and I decided to settle down and buy our apartment, we were immediately drawn to Rego Park. It is a family-friendly, diverse, middle-class neighborhood. We could foresee really becoming involved in this community and raising our children here. Since moving here, it's been an amazing experience getting to know our neighbors and exploring Central Queens. It is for that reason that I'm here to speak to you today. Central Queens has a very distinct community and identity that is different from the surrounding areas. Central Queens consists of the neighborhoods of Rego Park, Forest Hills, and Kew Gardens, as well as the eastern part of Elmhurst and the northern part of Richmond Hill. And a fun fact, one of our favorite superheroes is Spider-Man because he's from right here in Forest Hills. We are a diverse community with a large Jewish and Asian population. Our community shops at the Queens Center and Rego Center malls, and there are many local small businesses and great restaurants along 63rd Drive and Austin Street. I wanted to tell you about our cohesive neighborly community because I believe that our current districts do us a disservice by dividing us up. The current district lines completely split us up so that our neighborhood is represented by 3 different assembly members and 4 different state senators. the lines could be a case study for gerrymandering. I strongly believe that our community should have proper representations with elected officials who live in our community and serve our community. Right now, our senators and assembly members are more focused on other parts of their districts, and Central Queens is left as an afterthought. For these reasons, I decided to step up and become the co-chair of the Central Queens Redistricting Coalition. Our coalition, as some of my colleagues have mentioned, is a nonpartisan, neighborhood-based effort to provide a voice to the diverse center of Queens, resulting in fair representation for all. We plan to submit a fair and equitable map of how we believe our district should be drawn so that our assembly members and state senators reflect the Central Queens. We believe in mutual respect and that the redistricting process should be driven by the people. Neighborhoods and communities should be kept together and political expediency left out of the process. Our grassroots coalition is looking forward to supporting your work and providing specific recommendations for our Central Queens districts. If there are any other members of the Central Queens community who would like to join us, please reach out to us at centralqueensredistricting@gmail.com. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Raj. Really appreciate your coming.
Next, we have Ramdat Singh. Ramdat, you will be invited to speak.
Hi,
Hi, can you
Ramdat,
hear
how are
me?
you?
Hi,
Yes.
Commissioner, how are you?
How are you?
Good afternoon. My name is Ramdat Singh. I am a proud queer public school teacher and the Director of Civic Engagement at the Caribbean Equality Project. First, I would like to thank the Independent Redistricting Commission for this opportunity to testify and voice our redistricting concerns. Founded in 2015 in response to anti-LGBTQ+ hate violence in Richmond Hill, Queens, the Caribbean Equality Project is a community-based organization that empowers, advocates for, and represents LGBTQ+ Caribbean immigrants here in New York City. The Caribbean Equality Project is a proud member of the APA Voice Redistricting Task Force. As the Director of Civic Engagement, I oversee Caribbean Equality Project civic engagement work, which is focused on building political power through voter education campaigns. This year, our civic engagement organizing includes redistricting because we understand what it means to be excluded in our political system because of the division of Richmond Hill and Ozone Park. The neighborhood is divided into 7 assembly districts, which are 8023, 8024, 8027, 8031, 8032, and 8038. Richmond Hill and Ozone Park, also known as Little Guyana and Little Punjab, is home to the largest in the Caribbean and South Asian community in South Queens. Unfortunately, the census data will not accurately reflect our population because of the complex history where some community members check off Asian, while some other check off other on government documents because they don't necessarily identify with the ethnic categories provided. After the 2010 census, Richmond Hill Ozone Park experienced a housing mortgage crisis. In 2020, Richmond Hill Ozone Park had the highest COVID-19 positivity rate with little to no resources to address this pandemic. Within 2 redistricting cycles, this neighborhood has experienced multiple issues that were unable to be resolved due to multiple assembly district lines, dividing up our ability to build political power and bring resources to this community of interest. The 2002 and 2012 assembly maps severely split up a community of interest. We have a chance to write a new chapter to keep Richmond Hill and Ozone Park together and ensure this community of interest receives the resources it needs to thrive. Thank you so much, and thank you, commissioners.
Thanks, Ramdat. Appreciate your coming.
Great, thank you so much. Next we have Mohammed Amin. Mohammed, you will be invited to speak.
Hi, Mohammed. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
We're good.
Sorry, I just wanted to change my name really quickly. Is that possible?
Yeah, please go for it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Mohammed Q. Amin. I am a queer Indo-Caribbean Muslim immigrant, a community organizer, and a resident and homeowner of 15 years in Richmond Hill, Queens. I am also the founder and executive director of the Caribbean Equality Project, a community-based organization that empowers, advocates for, and represents Black and Brown LGBTQ Caribbean immigrants in New York City. We are a proud and leading coalition member of the APA Voice Redistricting Task Force. This year, the Caribbean Equality Project civic engagement organizing includes redistricting because we understand what it means to be excluded while experiencing LGBTQ inequities, housing discrimination, lack of healthcare and immigration resources, and employment disparities during a global pandemic. New York City is home to both the largest South Asian and Indo-Caribbean diasporic population. For example, Guyanese, Trinidadian, Jamaican, and Surinamese immigrants who are contributors to the New York City's economy, language, and cultural diversity, and a growing political power machine in Queens. In 2021, Richmond Hill, which is home to the largest Indo-Caribbean community, was officially declared Little Guyana by New York City. Historically, census data have not adequately reflected this ethnic community of interest intersectional identities, which have led to census count disparities. Currently, many Indo-Caribbeans are forced to classify themselves as Asian, while some select other on government documents. This is a form of immigrant injustice and political disenfranchisement. Currently, Richmond Hill, South Richmond Hill, Ozone Park, and South Ozone Park are unjustly divided into 7 assembly districts, which are 23, 24, 27, 28, 31, 32, and 38. By having a community of interest disproportionately divided in multiple assembly districts, it affects the livelihood of community members, including Indo-Caribbean small business owners. An example of this injustice is Naresh, a queer Indo-Caribbean community member who lives in Assembly District 38, owns a business that is located in 8032. Their child attends Richmond Hill High School, which is in 8024, and frequently attends a local Hindu temple that is located in 8031. As you can see, this community member must engage with 4 different assembly districts to improve their quality of life, address their child education needs, navigate COVID-19 business economic sustainability concerns, and also to effectively communicate safety, transportation, and religious issues. There are similar narratives and lived experiences throughout Richmond Hill and Ozone Park that illustrates a disenfranchised and marginalized immigrant community of interest. Today, I am advocating in front of the public and to the New York State Independent Redistricting Commission panel to keep the neighborhoods of Richmond Hill in Little Guyana and Ozone Park in Little Punjab together. Give us a fighting chance to thrive, have our voices heard, and to continue build political power in the world's most diverse borough of Queens. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mohammed.
Great. Next, we have Martha Aon, and after that, we'll have Danielle Brecker.
Hi, Martha.
Hi, how are you? Good afternoon.
How are you?
Good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me to provide testimony. My name is Martha Aon, and I'm one of the board members of the New Reformers. I've lived in Rego Park for my entire life, and my neighbors have never been given fair representation based on our district lines. I'm currently represented by Congressmember Grace Ming, State Senator Toby Stavitsky, Assembly Member Jeff Aubrey, and New York City Council Member Karen Kozlowitz. All of these elected officials are members of Democratic clubs that do not cover Rego Park in its entirety. Because of this, my neighborhood has struggled to organize a civic association or Democratic club because crossing the street leads to different elected representation. As a co-founder of New Reformers, our goal is to encourage and uplift the non-traditional Democrats who aren't represented in our county organization. But our district lines have been one of the many challenges we have faced when looking for neighborhood diversity. Our candidates come from certain neighborhoods because the district and county lines were drawn for elected officials. These lines were made to provide support for comfortable re-elections, but have separated neighbors who share similar issues, but with different elected officials. I hope this panel takes into consideration that these lines were made to help people connect with their neighbors, and our elected officials should be working towards a greater goal. I believe that politics is local and our government should start from the electoral district up towards the presidency. I ask the panel to keep in mind who we are trying to help, the voters of Queens County, not the county Democrats or the incumbents. In summary, I ask the panel to draw the lines so that all communities, neighborhoods, and groups have the same elected representation at every level of government. And given how diverse our districts are, that they should also be reflected in our party positions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Martha.
Great. Next, we have Danielle Brecker, and after that, we'll have James Hong and Kevin Cho.
Hi, Danielle.
Thank you. Hi, thank you so much. Thanks for having this hearing and letting all of us testify. My name is Danielle Brecker. I live in the Dutch Kills neighborhood in Long Island City, Queens, Congressional District 12, State Senate District 12, and Assembly District 37. I am a co-lead organizer of Empire State Indivisible. The Indivisible movement is predicated on holding those we elect to serve and the institutions of our democracy to account. As part of a statewide coalition, Empire State Indivisible helped advocate for the state voting reforms that have enabled more New Yorkers to have access to voting and to participate in our democracy. We see redistricting as an opportunity to build on that progress by enfranchising and engaging more New Yorkers, especially those who have long been disenfranchised by gerrymandering. Last year, as I helped with the census, I had conversations with my neighbors about why people on the next block, and in some cases next door, were in different congressional, state senate, and assembly districts. I live in Assembly District 37, but if I walk 2 blocks, I'm in Assembly District 30. If I walk 5 more blocks in the same direction, I'm in Assembly District 36. All of those blocks are in my neighborhood. There are similar situations in my congressional and state senate districts. The lines appear arbitrary and do not reflect neighborhood or community boundaries. They are likely in place for political reasons. This causes confusion and frustration for constituents, and in my view, leads to disenfranchisement. As I was preparing this testimony, many people suggested we use redistricting to protect or remove certain elected officials. I reject that. We should redistrict to give more New Yorkers a voice in their representation so we decide who serves us. Elected officials should not use redistricting to choose whom they serve. Redistricting should be fair, not politically driven, have the goal of enabling as much representation for as many people as possible, keep neighborhoods and communities together, and lead to more voter enfranchisement. While much of our country is limiting representation to protect a few from losing power, New York must take this opportunity to increase representation so the people, all New Yorkers, have power. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle.
Okay, next we have James Hong, and after that, Kevin Cho and Elizabeth Uyang.
Hi, James. How are you?
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Thanks for having me. Hello, commissioners. Thank you for your service and the opportunity to comment. My name is James Hong, and Northeast Queens has been my home and the focus of advocacy for over a decade. In the past, I was the spokesperson for Accord, a coalition of Asian American groups from the 2010 cycle, many of whom are here today in a different form. And at that time, I worked in Flushing while living in Woodside, Queens. And today, I come to you as a resident of Flushing, a citizen, and a voter who deeply believes in the importance of the task of this commission. Let me start with the assembly level, with the most problematic district in Northeast Queens, and that is Assembly District 27. Let me show my screen. This is simply an indefensible district. AB 27 is a tortured sausage, and it is a mystery how it was made. It goes through Beechhurst, Marlborough, College Point, Willets Point, Flushing, Kew Gardens Hills, Kew Gardens, and Forest Hills. There is simply no community of interest between these very disparate neighborhoods, each with different income levels, ethnic groups, transportation lines, and obviously needs from state government. In either in whole or in parts, College Point, which I live right next to, should be joined with 8026, 8040, or even 8035 in Corona. The rest of the district southward should be incorporated into the districts along the Van Wyck Expressway, and that highway should be a firm boundary between districts at the assembly level from 14th down to GFK. Excuse me. 8040, my home district, should be largely maintained, given it is a minority Asian district, probably the most compact of all assembly districts, and it elects one of New York's few Asian Americans to Albany. Now at the state Senate level, District 16, the Senate's only majority Asian district, and Senate District 11, which elects the state's only Asian American senator, I believe must be carefully considered once census data are released. But one thing is clear at this point for the Senate lines. The current boundaries egregiously divide vibrant Asian American communities along Hillside Avenue and along 8th Avenue in Sunset Park, Brooklyn. I will end with two congressional districts in which I have resided. While I know New York must reduce its delegation by one, District 6 and District 14 are both excellent districts which keep together similar neighborhoods and their communities of interest. They've both elected women of color who are leaders and popular in their districts. The courts really listen to the people and the selfless actors in that last round. These boundaries must be maintained as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, James.
And next we have Kevin Cho, and after that, Elizabeth Uyang and Heather Beers.
Hey, Kevin, how are you?
Hi, commissioners. How are you? Good afternoon. My name is Kevin. I'm with Korean Community Services of Metropolitan New York. We are a social services-based nonprofit here in Bayside, Queens. We are also a member of the APA Voices Redistricting Task Force, which is a coalition of 17 leading APA civic engagement groups throughout the city. Our collective members and services span throughout 5 boroughs, particularly over 20 APA communities in New York City alone. I just wanted to bring your attention to Bayside and Auburndale in Queens, which are 2 adjoining neighborhoods that are currently divided by Assembly District 25 and Assembly District 26. Given the expected growth of Asian Americans in the last 10 years, we believe that in the 2020 redistricting cycle, we see that as a possibility to create another Asian American majority assembly district in this area that constitutes that's consistent with the Voting Rights Act. At the very least, we are asking that Bayside and Auburndale are kept whole and the community interests are kept whole and together. And just to give you an example, not too long ago, few members within the task force, we actually did a drive-through throughout these neighborhoods in Bayside and Auburndale along the borders, and we really captured and documented the drastic changes that were brought. If we look at 2010 version of these maps, we can see that a lot of these areas in Auburndale, Bayside were blue at the time, which considered a lot of white neighborhoods and demographics, but now it's vastly pink. And to share some numbers, this is from the 2020, not the 2020, I'm sorry, from the 2017 Census 5-year American Community Survey. We can see that in Assembly District 26, there has been a total increase of 5.7% increase in the Asian American population. In District 25, there has been a total increase of 5.4%. When we did the drive-through, we really saw sort of how much the community relies on shared businesses, culturally sensitive services, as well as social and cultural interactions. We saw nail salons, it could be faith-based institutions, ethnic supermarkets. There's an actual lure station right by Auburndale as well that is shared by all the neighborhoods. So there's a huge, and obviously we're still waiting for the 2020 census report. However, based on the data that we have so far in census, there has been a huge increase. And the last thing I do want to share is that, KCS in 2017, we actually made a very strategic move to move our community center into Bayside because we saw the growth in the Asian American communities and their needs for culturally and linguistically sensitive services. We sort of converted, this was a Jewish synagogue at the time, into a multi-service organization now providing mental health services, education, adult literacy, youth programs, workforce, and so many. This really just shows, as we continue to struggle with the language and immigrant and elderly needs of our fastly growing community, it is crucial that our Asian communities with our shared interests are kept whole and together. So I just wanted to highlight Bayside and Arvindale as one of my examples. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin.
Great. Next, we have Elizabeth Uyang, Heather Beers, Jennifer Sen. Thank you.
Hi, Liz. How are you?
I'm good. I am trying to show my thing. There we are. Hi, Commissioner Imamura, Dr. Flato. So good to see you. Hi, Dr. Cuevas Molinas, Mr. Stevens, and Mr. Brady. My name is Elizabeth Oyang. I am the coordinator of APA Voice Redistricting Task Force. The task force is a coalition of 17 leading APA civic engagement groups in New York City. You just heard from 4 of them. For us, redistricting is not an academic exercise, nor simply a mathematical equation. For us, redistricting means power, accountability, and equal access to services that we will be entitled to for the next 10 years. That's why for the past 6 months, we have been meeting weekly, 22 times to date, to ensure the voices of our communities will be heard in this round of redistricting. We created multilingual educational materials on redistricting in English, Hindi, Bangla, Korean, and Chinese, conducted tabling outside supermarkets and in parks, used social media, and held trainings to ensure our communities understood the importance of redistricting. To involve our young members, we recently sponsored a teenage redistricting art contest. The theme, "This is where I belong." Through our lived experiences, targeted research, and organized car tours of districts encompassing our neighborhoods, 15 member organizations will testify orally and/or in writing to you, the Independent Redistricting Commission, in your first round of hearings. You've heard some already, so I'm just going to recap. For Queens County, these are our priorities. The neighborhood of Richmond Hill Ozone Park, South Ozone Park, is home to a large South Asian community and Indo-Caribbean community with shared religion, language, culture, food, history, and occupations. This area is currently, as you've heard, divided into 7 assembly districts, 777. It needs to be kept together at all levels of government. Secondly, the neighborhoods from Glen Oaks to Briarwood, east of Van Wyck Expressway, along both sides of Hillside Avenue, should be kept together in the same assembly district. Elmhurst, home to a large Asian American community with shared interests with Latinos, is divided into 3 assembly districts. Flushing, the busiest commercial and retail area with the largest public library and most public elementary schools in Queens, should remain, excuse me, the epicenter of a majority Asian American state Senate and assembly district and congressional seat. This can easily be accomplished without dividing the South Asian community along the southern border of the current assembly district. Auburndale and Bayside should be kept together in the same Senate and assembly district because they constitute an Asian American community of interest.
Thank you. That's time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you. Next, we have Jennifer Sun. Jennifer will be invited to speak, and after that, Mahtab Khan and Rehan Mahmood.
Good afternoon, commissioners.
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, good to see you today. My name is Jennifer Sun. I'm the co-executive director of Asian Americans for Equality, AFI, a 47-year-old community development organization dedicated to providing greater housing stability and economic opportunity for Asian Americans and other systematically disadvantaged communities. AFI is part of the APA Voice Redistricting Task Force, which is advocating through the redistricting process to unite communities with shared interests. Each year, AFI provides multilingual and culturally appropriate services to 20,000 New Yorkers through our offices in Chinatown, Manhattan, Flushing, Queens, and Jackson Heights, Elmhurst, Queens. Today, I'll be focusing my remarks on Jackson Heights and Elmhurst, where existing district lines have diluted the voices of low-income immigrant communities, depriving them of essential public resources. Our office on 84th Street is located in State Assembly District 39, just below the boundary with Assembly District 34. More than half of our clients last year in Queens came from just 3 zip codes, 20% from Jackson Heights, 18% from Elmhurst, and 15% from Corona. Jackson Heights and Elmhurst are undeniably communities of interest with large Asian and Latinx populations with shared socioeconomic attributes and community needs. We strongly believe they should be made whole through the redistricting process. These communities' shared interests are obvious to us as grassroots community organizers and service providers, and the data backs up what we see every day on the ground. Both neighborhoods have high poverty rates, 15% in Jackson Heights and 10% in Elmhurst based on 2019 data. In both communities, at least 1/3 of renter households were severely rent burdened in 2019. When communities are artificially divided, their ability to participate in the political process is undermined. But there are other consequences as well. Because Jackson Heights and Elmhurst are separated, community-based organizations, AFI included, are underfunded by city government and often hamstrung in their efforts to provide critical social services. For example, AFI holds a contract with the New York City Department of Youth and Community Development, DYCD, to provide senior services for Neighborhood Development Area 3. NDA 3 includes Jackson Heights, Elmhurst, and North Corona. Although we also serve many residents of neighboring NDA 4, including Elmhurst and South Corona, our work with these clients does not count towards the contract deliverables. What these experiences tell us is obvious, that these communities should be kept whole, and I appreciate the opportunity to testify before you today. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thanks. Great. Next, we have Heather Beers Dimitriadis. And after that, we'll have Mahtab Khan and Rehan Mahmood.
Hi, Heather. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. How are you?
Oh, good.
Good. I want to first start by thanking the commissioners and their staff for their service on the New York State Independent Redistricting Commission. Your staff is doing a fantastic job today. My name is Heather Beers Dimitriadis. New York State has been my home for 35 years, 27 of those in Central Queens. For the past 21 years, Rego Park has been my home. It is a community nestled in the center of Queens County, encircled by the Long Island Expressway, Grand Central Parkway, and Woodhaven Boulevard. Presently, Rego Park has 2 state senators, 3 state assembly members, 1 city council member, and 1 congressperson. In my community, I have served on the school leadership team at 2 area schools, the City Council District 29 Committee for Participatory Budgeting, Community Board 6 in the role of Vice Chair of Finance and Co-Chair for the Education, Youth, and Library Committee, and currently I am the co-chair of the Central Queens Redistricting Coalition. Our coalition is a nonpartisan, neighborhood-based effort to provide a voice to the diverse center of Queens, resulting at the end of the day in fair representation for everyone. One could draw the conclusion that more representation, 3 state assembly members and 2 state senators for Rego Park is better, but nothing could be further from the truth. The current districting of Queens divides up individual Central Queens neighborhoods, reducing them to very small parts of a greater whole. Assembly District 30 has approximately 60 households in Rego Park. Moving those households into District 28 would be a step in the right direction to making Rego Park representatively whole. Assembly District 35 has the remaining portion of Rego Park that also should be moved into Assembly District 28. Assembly District 28 extends west of Woodhaven into Middle Village and Fresh Pond. Rego Park does not share a school district with that portion of the Assembly District, whereas we do share a school district with the portions of the mentioned earlier Assembly District 30 and 35. Rego Park also gets the short end of the stick when it comes to its placements in Senate Districts 15 and 16. Rego Park is basically split in half. This community finds itself in districts that it has very little in common with. Having a district that runs from Maspeth into Rockaway Beach and another that runs from Woodside to Park does not show continuity. To travel from Woodside to Alley Pond Park by public transportation can take up to 1 hour and 21 minutes. And travel from Maspeth to Rockaway Beach takes 3 buses and 1 hour and 30 minutes. A Senate district that includes neighborhoods possibly for like North Richmond Hill, Kew Gardens, Briarwood, Forest Hills, Rego Park, and Elmhurst would make more sense. We share shopping, districts, school districts, transit lines, and ease of transportation between them. As you embark on this huge undertaking, I ask that you consider district continuity in regards to shared transit, shared community boards, and shared school districts. As a member of Queens Community Board 6, it becomes very challenging to engage with your electeds when the board that represents 2 neighborhoods has 3 state senators, 4 state assembly members, 2 city council members, and 1 congressperson. We all know that we can do better, and we must do better. Thank you so very much for your time today.
Thank you, Heather. Appreciate it.
Next. And after that, Phil Koenigsberg and Mark Laster.
Hey, Rehan, how are you?
Hi, Commissioner. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'll start right away. Good afternoon. My name is Rehan Mahmood, and I'm from South Asian Council for Social Services, or SACS, working as Director, Health Services. SACS is a member of APA Voice Redistricting Task Force. Just to give you a perspective on how important it is that our communities are kept together, I will just give you a brief overview of our work. Founded in 2000, SACS focuses on 4 key areas: healthcare access, senior services, food security, which became a major thing, a major resource for our communities during the pandemic, and civic engagement. Every year, we serve over 30,000 unique clients from all over New York City and Long Island. Our South Asian Food Pantry was the first culturally palatable food pantry in the tri-state region, and it serves over 5,000 clients every week. Pre-pandemic, we were only serving like around 300 clients on a 2-weekly basis. Right now, it is 5,000 clients every week. We speak 18 different languages. These are the languages spoken by our staff, which include 12 South Asian languages: Spanish, Mandarin, Cantonese, Malay, French, and Haitian Creole. Majority of our clients come from Queens. Over the years, we have seen that the South Asian community has expanded to many parts of Queens, especially in Flushing. SACS is based in the heart of Flushing, surrounded by many faith-based centers and cultural centers. The South Asian community living in Flushing is right now divided between the jagged lines bordering Assembly District 40 and 25. Our own office is also located in Assembly District 25 on the borderline between Assembly District 40 and 25. A most glaring example is the Census Tract 79701. This tract has the highest concentration of South Asians and is literally divided between these 2 districts. The main concentration of South Asians in this district, in this tract, are bordered by Franklin Avenue, Casina Boulevard, Elder Avenue, and Colden Street. This area should be kept whole with the majority of temples, mosques, and other major places of worship that are in the current Assembly District 25. So the community and the religious centers they frequent are kept together in the same district. In addition to this major eyesore, while most of the major places of worship in the South Asian community are in Assembly District 25, BAPS, Shri Swaminarayan Temple, which is one of the biggest temples in New York, is in Assembly District 40 on Bound Street near the border of Assembly District 40 and 25. To keep the community and major religious centers together, we recommend that the lines be drawn in such a way that the South Asian community is kept together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rehan.
Great. Next, we have Phil Koenigsberg, Mark Laster, and Alan Sherman.
Hi, Phil.
Hello, there we go. Hi. My name is Phil Koenigsberg. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak for your hopeful adhering to what I'm asking. I'm a Northeast Queens longtime resident, almost 30 years, and been very active in my community. I'm a member of Queens Community Board 7, Vice President of the Bay Terrace Community Alliance, a board member of the Bayside Historical Society, and the founder of the Bayside Smoke-Free Housing Alliance. But I want to be clear, I'm speaking as an individual, not as a representative of the organizations that I've mentioned. Bay Terrace is, as I said, Northeast Queens. And for the life of me, and it's more than 10 years, Northeast Queens Bay Terrace has been part of the majority of Nassau and Suffolk County Congressional District. I live in Congressional District 3. Most of Bayside is in the neighboring Congressional District 6. I'm doing this strictly as a recommendation for geographic that I personally am very involved in Queens. I'm not very involved in Nassau or Suffolk County. I don't see the overwhelming connection of that area to the small section in Queens. The representatives, I know them for years very well. They're excellent representatives for our district, but I believe this is something that should be changed. And that's really all I have to say. So thank you very much, and hope to see you on the second round. I believe if we have hearings that you're gonna take my recommendations into consideration, and I'll thank you for it at that time.
Thank you, Phil.
Okay, bye-bye now.
Thank you. Next, we have Mark Laster.
Yeah, I apologize. My camera was working and then all of a sudden it just stopped. So I can't try one more time. It's not letting me. Okay, so anyhow.
Should we skip Miranda and then if Mark can figure out his camera?
No, can I still talk anyhow? Even
no, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so, all right.
Yes, hi, Mark. Yeah, go for it.
Let me see if I can reset my camera.
We can come back to you, Mark, if you don't mind.
Yeah, Bunch, come back to me. Can I to log back in? Because I think that's the problem.
Whatever you would like, but you can also.
Okay,
there we are.
Wait,
we had you for a second there, Mark.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Let's see if this, he asked me to start the video. Okay, it says the host.
If you're having trouble, we're also.
Okay, it's not letting me. All right, so log back. I'll log out and log back in, okay?
Okay, great. So next we will have Alan Sherman, and then Jerry Vatamala, and then Paperboy Prince.
I think you have my camera turned off. There we go. Hi, I'm Alan Sherman from Kew Gardens Hills, Assembly District 27. I've lived in Queens since 1963, Kew Gardens Hills since 1974. We are a largely Orthodox Jewish community, and with the rise of anti-Semitism in this country and this world, we need to be unified. Splitting our district will only hurt the Jewish population within the district. I believe we are all in this together, and we all need to work together. But once again, with the rise of anti-Semitism and the fact that Ben and Jerry's, doesn't even like us anymore. We need to have our district unified. Now, there is a section of our district east of our district going out towards Long Island that has a large Jewish population that should be incorporated into District 27. We have approximately 60 synagogues as well as churches and mosques, and we all live peacefully together. And we want to see that continued as one unified district. And I'm just a simple citizen of the neighborhood. I mean, people know me. I know them. I help them when they need to reach out to our government. I'm not looking into this any more than what it is. It just concerns citizens wanting to live a safe, peaceful life. So I hope when you reconsider the redistricting that you leave Kew Hills unified. We've lived a peaceful, good life, and we want to continue that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
All right, next we have Jerry Vadamala, Paperboy Prince, and then Mahtab Khan.
Hi, Jerry. How are you?
Good afternoon, Commissioner and the other commissioners. Very nice to see you all. Are we going to restart the clock?
Yeah, can you restart the clock?
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Jerry Vadamala. I'm the director of the Democracy Program for the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, ALDEF. ALDEF is a 47-year-old nonpartisan organization based in New York City that protects and promotes the civil rights of Asian Americans. And we do that through litigation, advocacy, community education, organizing. In the area of voting rights, ALDEF works on enforcement of the Federal Voting Rights Act, bilingual ballots, electoral reform, anti-Asian voter discrimination, and redistricting. ALDEF is a member of the APA Voice Redistricting Task Force, as well as a member of the Unity Map Coalition, which also includes Latino Justice, PearlDef, and the Center for Law and Social Justice at Medgar Evers College. Since 1982, ALDEF has commented on redistricting plans, worked with community groups to develop proposed maps, and litigated cases challenging redistricting plans that violate the Voting Rights Act. ALDEF was instrumental in the creation of Asian American majority districts at the assembly level, state senate, and city council level. We have also litigated redistricting cases in the last several cycles in New York, including Favors v. Cuomo in the last cycle, which created Congressional District 6, which is a plurality Asian American congressional district centered in Flushing, which elected the first Asian American to Congress from New York State. That litigation also maintained Congressional District 7, which is represented by the first Puerto Rican to serve in Congress, and recognizes that Manhattan's Chinatown and Brooklyn Sunset Park are one Asian American community of interest that must be kept together. I'm going to refer you to my written testimony for more details, but in summary, some real issues that we have with the Assembly District right now for the Asian American community, you guessed it, Richmond Hill, South Ozone Park. Again, 7 different Assembly districts. This was the case 10 years ago. It was the most divided neighborhood in the entire city, and this cannot stand. So we hope that's your first priority as well. As my colleague John Albert mentioned, Assembly District 24, please do not extend Assembly District 24 past the Van Wyck into Richmond Hill. That's one of those 7 districts that are dipping into that community and dividing it. Elmhurst, as my other colleagues, Elmhurst is similarly divided into multiple assembly districts, and this was the case 10 years ago. These things have not changed, they've gotten worse. College Point should not be in Assembly District 27, and for the state senate, we must maintain an Asian American majority state senate district that is centered in Flushing. ALDEF will again submit Asian American communities of interest maps and accompanying narratives. We will also submit a unity map proposal for state assembly, state senate, and congressional districts for New York City. I'll just conclude with this. Asian Americans are a protected racial minority group under the Federal Voting Rights Act. Given the changing demographics of New York City, Asian Americans continue to be severely underrepresented in New York State legislature and in Congress. We urge this commission to keep communities of common interest together and drawing new districts and allowing all the protected groups under the Federal Voting Rights Act to equally participate in our democracy. We hope to work with you on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerry.
Great. Next, we have Paperboy Prince, then Mark Laster, and then Mahtab Khan.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'd like to thank the
So
commission.
Mark, I think Paperboy Prince was first, right, Miranda?
Oh,
Or-
sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, yes. Hello,
Hi, how's it going?
how are you? Thanks so much for coming.
I'm fantastic, happy to be here. Can I start?
Yes, please, go, please.
Paper, yeah, it's our time, one love. It's Paperboy Prince, Paperboy Love Prince. I'm an artist and activist here in New York City, specifically here in North Brooklyn and Bushwick. I ran for Congress in District 7 and for mayor as well. And, you know, I ran for Congress in District 7, where I believe Jerry, who just spoke, talked about, and he mentioned some of the different communities that are there in Sunset Park, in Chinatown, and keeping these communities together. You know, running for Congress in one of the only, right under the train here on Myrtle Avenue. I'm here at my shop, the Love Gallery on Myrtle Avenue. And one of the main issues is these districts with so many different folks in them. We have to find a way to have the districts consolidated into geographic zones while still, you know, preserving the civil rights of different disenfranchised communities. And these weird shaped districts are clearly have been here to keep the status quo. And I feel like we have an awesome opportunity to change that, to reverse that. So finding a way to make sure that happens. You know, these gerrymandered districts, they seek to quell the voices of our city that make our city great. You know, this city has so many different people in it, and I feel like we have to have fun about this process. We have to have more opportunities to get in the process of shaping these districts, and then beyond that, allowing them to know who their electeds are moving forward. You know, as a member of so many communities, the youth, the queer community, the Black community, the Latino community as well. You know, hello, how's it going? One love. Yes. Oh, welcome. And he just said that she's from Ecuador. So we have someone who here in this beautiful community, a lovely community here, someone just arriving from Ecuador. How do we make sure that all communities stay represented even as we move forward? And, you know, we already know that the census doesn't accurately capture everyone that lives in our communities as well. So I feel like we have to find a way right now to get the conversation going to how can we have all the communities represented, but in the gerrymander. Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate your speaking. And I think Mark is next now, right, Miranda?
Yes.
Sorry
Mark.
about that, Mark.
Then we have.
We see you, Mark.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Briefly. Sorry, Mark.
And I'm
Before you
not in
begin.
San Francisco.
Wait.
Anyhow, good afternoon.
Mark,
My name,
Mark.
I thank
Miranda. Sorry, Mark. Miranda, what were you saying?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Just we have Mahtab Khan, and then Joby Jacob and Ruben Cruz.
Okay, great. Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Okay, hi. Good afternoon. I thank the commission for holding this hearing. I look forward to a productive relationship through this challenging redistricting process. My name is Mark Laster, and I'm one of the founders of the Central Queens Redistricting Coalition. I am also one of the founders of the Forest Hills Green Team and currently serve as the co-chair. I am an executive committee member of Queens Community Board number 6 and co-chair of the Aging Social Service Disability Committee. Professionally, I'm a licensed clinical social worker with 40 years of experience, primarily in services to the elderly, people with mental health challenges, and people who have suffered a traumatic brain injury. My comments today reflect my thoughts regarding redistricting. I'm a 30-year resident of Rego Park, and as a civic leader, the currently drawn districts are challenging for me to effectively engage in advocacy for my community. We currently have 3 assembly members representing our community and 3 state senators. Our 3 state senator districts cover a multiple number of communities, and face serious challenges effectively representing these diverse communities. None of our state senators have offices in either Regal Park or Forest Hills. One of our 3 assembly members have an office in Forest Hills, Regal Park. Two of our state senators do not send representatives to our community board, as well as one of our state assembly members. As the Central Queens Redistricting Coalition, which is a nonpartisan, neighborhood-based effort to provide a voice to the diverse center of Queens, embarks upon our efforts to draw maps that we plan to result in fair representation for all, we will be carefully looking at what the communities of interest are. We have recruited representatives of Regal Park, the eastern edge of Elmhurst, Forest Hills, Kew Gardens, and North Richmond Hill in order to develop these maps from a grassroots perspective. When you look at this area, there are actually 4 state Senate districts and 3 state assembly districts. We all understand this will be a sprint to develop these maps when current data for them will be available in the earliest mid-August. We also understand there are currently questions being raised about the accuracy of this data, but plan to use it once released. We also know that the timelines when the maps need to be submitted could change based upon the current amendment to the state constitution is approved in November. We also know that the maps we draw in Central Queens will affect other parts of Queens, which in turn will impact upon other parts of New York City and ultimately the full state. We are looking to partner with like-minded coalitions in order to develop a fair and equitable map for the state. If anyone listening to this hearing would be interested in partnering with us, please email us at centralqueensredistricting@gmail.com. That's centralqueensredistricting@gmail.com. You can also connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you again for giving me this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate your coming.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mahtab Khan, Joby Jacob, and Ruben Cruz.
Hi, Mahtab. How are you?
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon. Thank you, Commission, for all your hard work and for taking this time to speak with our community members. My name is Mahtab Khan, and I'm a resident of Jamaica, Queens. I'm also the secretary of the Muslim Democrat Club of New York and someone who worked with the Census Bureau as a navigator, door knocking communities here in Jamaica to help them fill out the census. I'm here today because there are so many marginalized communities here in Assembly District 24, particularly in Jamaica, Queens, that have been left out of the process for far too long. We've been underserved, underrepresented, and underfunded, again, for far too long. And as we all know, district lines play a huge role in deciding all that. Any drastic changes to our district lines would cause further division in these communities in how we have these, representation or funding. And as a Bangladeshi American, as a South Asian American, and as a Muslim American, I also like to note that it is at our community's best interest to have our community stay together and not have any new lines divide our community any further, as it has done so in the past. And I also want to note that elected officials should not be able to decide who they represent and serve or how lines are drawn. We, the people, should decide that. As a resident of Jamaica, Queens, I'd also like to request the commission to keep our district lines relatively stay the same. But at the most part, maybe include blocks south of Hillside Avenue where a lot of folks from the South Asian, Bangladeshi, South Asian community reside. And in the next 10 years, I'd like to see more representation for folks coming from marginalized communities here, especially that of the Bangladeshi and Muslim and South Asian community. I'd also like to see more leadership reflect the diversity of our district because representation matters in all levels of government. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahtab, and thank you for your service with the census.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next, we have Joby Jacob, Ruben Cruz, and Frederick Velez Burgos.
Hi, Joby. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Are we resetting the timer? Sorry to.
Yeah, no. Thank you
yes,
for.
Of course. Sorry about that. Just give us a moment.
I'm always super sensitive about timing. I'm trying to get it exactly. All right.
You'll get all your
all
time.
Right.
There you go.
I'm Dr. Joby Jacob. I'm an associate professor at LaGuardia Community College and a very active member of many community groups, including Transportation Alternatives and Eastern Queens Greenway. My transportation and parks advocacy often brings me into the world of elected officials, and despite living in Eastern Queens for over 40 years, I'm sad to say I've never interacted with an elected official that looks like me in my own community. I'm going to speak frankly. Districts in Queens sure look like they're drawn to crack Asian and Hispanic votes. Nearly 90,000 people live in the census tracts bounded by the Grand Central Parkway to the north, Jamaica Avenue to the south, 188th Street to the west, and the city line to the east. Broadly speaking, South Asians are a plurality in this area, but the area has significant African American and Hispanic populations as well. Community life in these areas centers on streets like Hillside Avenue and Union Turnpike, where you can buy your ethnic groceries, eat at ethnic restaurants, see people wearing traditional clothing, and hear various languages being spoken on the streets. I've drawn a map, which I've shared in the chat, and I'll submit testimony, of course. In this map, I've excluded North Shore Towers because it serves as an enclave. They have their own shopping, their own banks. It's quite distinct from the rest of the community. Glen Oaks and Floral Park are considered one neighborhood tabulation area by New York City Planning. That's Exhibit B. And New York City Council District 23 is drawn to keep these communities intact. In contrast, if you were to examine the New York State electoral map, you'd notice that this same community of interest is divided between 3 assembly seats, thus ensuring that South Asians, Hispanics, and African Americans can never constitute a majority or even a plurality in these areas. This is but one example. You can find the same dynamic all throughout Queens. Recently, Shekhar Krishnan, who's running for city council in Jackson Heights, told a story about how a father told him how his son was being bullied for his dark skin, and how he was able to use Shekhar's poster in a shop window to give his son hope. Representation matters. The majority minority community here is growing, and it's important that the person representing this growing community is first off answerable to that community and ideally reflects that community. And this can only happen if that community is kept intact. I'm pleading with you to recognize that this is a community of interest and not allow it to be divided up by legislators for their own petty purposes. And with that, I'll conclude my remarks.
Thank you, Professor.
Great. Next, we have Ruben Cruz, Frederick Velos Burgos, Valerie Small, and Richard David. And thank you everyone for your patience.
Hi, Ruben, how are you?
Good afternoon, thank you. I feel guilty bringing up our small matters here when we have so much that we need to do. But I'm hoping that with the small matters, it could help address the bigger issues that we have. In particular, Richmond Hill seems to be a focal point for a lot of the issues that we have with redistricting. One thing that disturbs me, however, is how you have so much to do, and yet we waste so much time revealing our resumes and giving commercial slots to what we do. It shouldn't matter whether I'm the president of a multi-million-dollar company or a single mom trying to pay the rent and feed their children. We should all count equally, and all this resume stuff seems to be just taking away time that we need to be focusing on our communities. Second thing that concerns me is how we're so concerned about keeping our communities together. Community does not equal race or culture. We rally so much about segregation in our schools, and yet I'm hearing us talk about segregating our communities. We want to keep our people together. That's segregation. So I believe that we need to open up our communities more to accept everyone. Back to Richmond Hill, we know that our districts, many times in particular, what Muhammad Amin mentioned before, how one person could be addressing 4 or 5 different assembly districts in their neighborhood. If I can share with you briefly, the map of the assembly district, we have natural barriers, which is Forest Park, which divides Richmond Hill from the rest of the district. As you can see, as I hope to show, if you just allow me a moment, and we focus in more on the actual district, we're isolated from the rest of the community. And in particular, right here in our district, we had a fire that took four of our buildings in our community, and our assembly member was never there. Our neighboring assembly member was closer and was there to support us. We had a recent attempt of an abduction of a 5-year-old right here in our small community. Nobody was here to help us because we're isolated. So we need to rewrite the district so that we have access and people could access us and help us out. Bless you all and thank you.
Thank you, Ruben. Appreciate your coming.
Great. Next, we have Frederick Velez Burgos, Valerie Small, and then Richard David.
Hi, Frederick. How are you?
Hi, Commissioner. I'm good. Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Frederick Velez, and I am the National Director of Civic Engagement at Hispanic Federation. Thank you for this opportunity to testify today in this hearing. Since our inception in 1990, Hispanic Federation's mission has been to empower and advance the Hispanic community. And several decades later, HF has and continues to be a leading force in the battle to have a fair and accountable government. Following each census, HF has been on the front lines advocating for Latino voices to be heard and included in the reapportionment and redistricting process. This includes educational advocacy around census participation. In 2020 alone, we reached out to millions of New Yorkers focusing on culturally competent outreach at the height of the global pandemic. We were able to virtually engage our community and continue our battle to debunk the myths that were created around the census. So this meant working with Latino immigrant communities to help them get counted despite fear instilled by misinformation, helping motivate individuals that did not see the point of getting counted, and even talking about the effects of the census on redistricting. So you can imagine our disappointment when New York State lost a seat because we did not count 89 more people. A loss that unfortunately will be felt for the next 10 years and that dilutes the power and representation of our city's communities of color. Even though we lost a congressional seat, New York State has seen a dramatic growth in the Latino population over the last few decades, with 3.7 million Latinos calling New York State home. And Queens is a living testimony of that growth. It has the second highest concentration of Latinos in the whole state after the Bronx. The neighborhoods of Northern Corona and Jackson Heights, which border one another, are the borough's largest Latino neighborhoods, with 60% of the residents identifying as Latinos, and 62% of the overall population are native Spanish speakers. A second set of neighborhoods with a significant Latino population is Richwood, Glendale, and the Middle Village, with 27% of residents identifying as Latinos, and the census also uncovered that 76% of the residents were foreign-born. Finally, Richmond Hill and Woodhaven are 97% Latino, with 36% of all households speaking Spanish as their primary language. Now, the Latino population in the above-mentioned neighborhoods has seen an exponential growth, but so has Black and Asian communities. Residents of these neighborhoods are mainly working-class families who are first or second-generation immigrants that live in mixed-status households. Together, we must ensure that the systems and processes by which we draw district lines are transparent, fair, and representative, that there is reciprocity in shared information, and that it's done in a culturally competent manner. New York State can lead by advancing a process for drawing district boundaries that centers diverse communities and provides the requisite resources, capacity, and the time necessary to ensure that all communities are included. We look forward to working together towards achieving a fair and equitable redistricting process that is reflective of the dramatic growth of our communities in New York, and that allows our communities the opportunity to have fair representation and to have candidates that reflect their ideas and that help meet the need of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Frederick.
Next, we have Valerie.
Hi, Valerie. You are on mute, Valerie. If we could reset the timer for Valerie, please.
No, I won't be that long.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Commissioner. I'm just here really to find out some information and gather information about what's going on with the redistricting. I'm a resident of Laurelton, New York, and my concern, I would just say, if we are part of this, is that if we are redistrict, I know that our taxes will increase. That's number one. And that's a major concern of mine. And if that happened, that means that a lot of residents here will probably lose their property. And Laurelton is a large community made up of people from the Caribbean, Black Americans, and in addition to that, African Americans. So that's really what my concern is. And that's pretty much what I have to voice right here. I'm concerned that if we are part of this process, I know that's what will happen, because there are a lot of people coming into the community, leaving signs and letters in our doors, asking us if we want to sell our properties for cash. And this is really a red flag for us. So that's my concern. And by the way, I'm the vice president of the Block Association here in Laurelton at 226. So there we go.
Thank you, Valerie.
Thank you.
All right, and our last speaker before we take a little break will be Richard David.
Hi, Richard, how are you?
Hey, doing good. Good afternoon, commissioners and staff of this important commission. It's nice to be with you, and I don't envy the incredible task that is before you. My name is Richard David. I live in South Ozone Park, Queens. I was born in Guyana, and I came here 26 years ago. I live here with my family. I teach at York College. I've worked in government for 10 years, and I sit on the board of a number of organizations. I'm also a Democratic district leader in Assembly District 31. I identify as Indo-Caribbean and Guyanese American. I think this body and government bodies see me as Asian American. I'm here today to talk about a topic that is the hottest topic of this testimony so far, the gerrymandering of Ozone Park, Richmond Hill, and South Ozone Park, which are in 7 assembly districts, 2 Senate districts, and 2 congressional districts. And I'll mention the Senate and congressional districts, Senate districts 10, 14, and 15. It's actually 3, and congressional districts 5 and 8. My testimony has the assembly districts. I testified before this body 10 years ago, and tremendous change has happened since then. We've had elected officials at the state level in District 38, and a Indo-Caribbean South Asian woman just won in Ozone Park in the city council. We've also named our neighborhoods Richmond Hill, Little Guyana, Little Punjab, and soon Little Trinidad. Not much else has changed though, and we have a textbook case of gerrymandering here in our neighborhood. Where else are you going to see 7 assembly districts between your waking up in the morning and getting doubles at your local roti shop, and then getting coffee before going to a local park to watch a cricket game and maybe a drink before lunch? 7 assembly districts. Nowhere in New York City will you experience that in a 10-minute drive. The pride and joy of our neighborhood is Liberty Avenue. There's not a single political office that is on Liberty Avenue. And in fact, Liberty Avenue, the heart of our neighborhood, is itself divided among the different assembly districts. There are no city or state funded senior centers in this neighborhood. During the COVID-19 crisis, we were among the last neighborhoods to get vaccine sites, PPE, and even food. During the census, we had among the lowest response rates because this neighborhood continues to be divided. Now, I mentioned I'm a district leader in Assembly District 31. That means driving through a highway, it's the only thing that connects the east and west parts of my district, which on the east half is Springfield Gardens, Rosedale, and Brookville, and then getting a boat and going over to Far Rockaway because the North Shore, the northern part of the Rockaways, is also a part of District 31. I don't envy the task before you. I hope that you will listen to all the speakers here today and do justice to Ozone Park, Richmond Hill, and South Ozone Park. Thank you for this opportunity to testify before you.
Thank you, Richard. So commissioners, we are reaching our designated break. Is everyone all right with taking the break? Okay, so Miranda, what time did you want to reconvene under your schedule?
4 o'clock would be best.
4 o'clock, all right. So commissioners, we are going on break until 4 o'clock. See you in 20 minutes.
Give us a moment, please. Great. So we will have Raymond Lin, and then Simone Jingor, and then Ashok Ramsaran.
Great. Hi, Ramon. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. I guess I can start.
1 second, just, is the timer working? Are we good with the timer? Yes, okay. Please go ahead, Raymond.
So I would love to see, especially in Western Queens, I would love to see 30s, District 30 to be more compact and less drawn out into Astoria. I would love, that was one of the main things, because I think a lot of people in Maspeth, a lot of people in Middle Village don't really, and like Woodside and Astoria don't really connect, and it's not really communities of interest together. I would also love to see an assembly district centered on Elmhurst, which is a big Asian American community, and I think currently it is split between 34, 39, and 35, and I would love to see a district based on that. For the state Senate side, I think 16, District 16, it doesn't really match anything as much at all. Like it just strings out into Eastern Queens from Western Queens, and I think it doesn't really like connect much groups of people. It could work if it connected Flushing and Elmhurst together, but I think that might end up into too many, like it might be kind of packing Asian Americans together, and I don't think that is a good idea. I also think that State Senate District 11 is a mess and needs to be rectified immediately. It needs to, I call it like the finger tendrils into Jamaica, and it's very odd. And I think that's the case with a lot of districts in Queens, State Senate districts. 15 is also quite odd. I just call it, it connects all the white people in, like the Caucasians in Central Queens, and like down to the Rockaways. And that is not like, and that's in a very weird way. And I think a lot of state districts, I would love to see more compact districts in the state side. I'm not sure if you guys do federal, but I will go into it a little bit. For federally, I would love to see District 14 split between Bronx and Queens. Bronx and Queens are not communities of interest. They have very different identities, and I know it's been the case since the 90s that this district existed, but I think it's really big time to split off, 14 Bronx and take over the 12th district, congressional district. Its Queens side should be moved into 14. I think that is the main thing. I think the past redistricting has been really good for New York's 6th congressional district. I would love to see more changes, more like, I'll be interested in seeing what happens, and I will definitely comment when you release the plans. Thank you. I think this is it for me.
Thank you, Raymond. Really appreciate your speaking.
Next, we have Simone Jingor.
Hi, Simone. How are you?
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for the opportunity to address this commission. My name is Simone Jingor, and I am a co-director of Jahaji Sisters, an organization that was founded in 2007. We're a healing and political home for Indo-Caribbeans who have survived gender-based violence, and we organize with them to achieve gender justice. Our community of support guides survivors to heal, recover, and thrive. Through leadership development, grassroots organizing, and arts activism, we amplify community voices to transform culture. Our Indo-Caribbean community, which is primarily based in the Richmond Hill, South Ozone, and Ozone Park areas of Queens, is a large and marginalized Asian American population. Our members are immigrant and first-generation survivors, child witnesses, and working-class women vulnerable to abuse at home and on the job. In 2013, the New York City Department of City Planning issued a report showing that Guyanese are the second largest immigrant group in Queens and the 5th largest in New York City. Despite our large population, our struggles go unaddressed. We experience domestic violence at alarming rates, and the areas that we live in are resource deserts. In fact, Little Guyana has been one of the most impacted by COVID infections and also one of the last to receive testing or vaccine sites. We're testifying today because the survivors we serve need for Richmond Hill, South Ozone Park, and Ozone Park to remain whole. Right now, political lines split our community apart, which makes more work for organizers and advocates like us who are fighting for better conditions. Why should we have to make demands of 6 different legislative offices? Why should we stretch the valuable time and energy of our working class members who are struggling to make ends meet, but yet put in the work to share their stories with elected officials? The way our community is split up is also evidence of gerrymandering and is deeply concerning for the marginalized groups that live in this area. That can be seen in the many assembly districts that are fragmented in Richmond Hill, which has 6 different overlapping assembly districts. Communities here are mostly immigrant. They share the same needs for job opportunities, affordable housing, transportation improvement, and healthcare. They go to the same schools, they worship at the same temples, churches, and masjids, yet we are broken up. When we need elected officials to advocate for us, this becomes extremely problematic because legislators are able to say, oh, this is not my responsibility. This is the responsibility of X, Y, or Z legislator. They pass the buck and then the community does not get the attention it deserves. We want to make sure redistricting is done fairly and with justice as the guiding force. We want to make sure you know that the Indo-Caribbean community is among the most egregiously gerrymandered in all of New York State. We ask that you keep Richmond Hill, South Ozone Park, and Ozone Park together in the redistricting process. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Simone.
Great, thank you. Next we have Ashok Ramsaran, and then Beverly Brewster and Michael Mallon.
Hi, Ashok, how are you?
Good afternoon. A copy of my testimony has been uploaded for the record. My name is Ashok Ramsaran, a longtime resident of Queens for 53 years. I'm a vice president of Queens Civic Congress, representing more than 80 civic and community organizations throughout the borough of Queens, providing a forum for the civic associations and neighborhood organizations. I'm also co-chair of Queens Complete Count Census 2020, and I've testified in several hearings, including Redistricting 2017, our 2-year rezoning, landmarking of Brinkerhoff, and Diwali as a school holiday. Rachel Faust of Citizens Union said, lack of fair and objective criteria in the drawing of district lines has too often allowed for the protections of incumbent legislators at the expense of communities of interest. I fully support the community initiative for a cohesive state assembly and state senate district to include the South Asian and Indo-Caribbean population of Richmond Hill, Ozone Park, South Ozone Park, and Woodhaven. I join with others in advocating the critical need to retain a single, contiguous, compact, cohesive community for fair and equitable, effective representation of people with similar backgrounds and interests, families and friends, and with shared culture, history, and aspirations, with a community spirit as well as shared concerns and values in a singular district in order to keep the community area intact socially, culturally, economically, and politically. Census 2020 shows that Queens count was less than New York State's 64%, far less than the national response of 67%. These statistics are used to determine redistricting. Doing so without consideration of the uncounted would be denying segments of areas with deservedly real representation. It is critical to keep a unified compact district with natural and sensible boundaries. It makes no sense to partition and divide this community, ripping apart neighborhoods and destroying the strong partnership shared by those who live in these communities. The Constitution and Voting Rights Act of 1965 guarantee fair and equitable representation. Please do not divide, dilute, and disrupt. It is not in the people's interest. You have a tough job to do and we can help you. We ask that you do the right thing. It is your duty. New York State must not become like Texas. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashok, and thank you for your work with the census.
Great, next we have Beverly Brewster, then Michael Mallon, and John Park after that.
Hi, Beverly, how are you?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. It's good to be with you today, and thank you for inviting me. Now, I am Beverly Brewster. I grew up in Amityville, and I furthered my studies through 3 different colleges. And I am a retired hospital administrator, school counselor, and Girl Scout leader. Presently, I'm assisting with after-school homework. Bethel AME is my church, and I am a member of several organizations, including the NAACP. I live in Western Suffolk. I am here today because, again, I was unable to get in before, and it took me almost an hour and I still didn't get in. But thank you for having me today. I have always been interested with what goes on in my community for quite some time. I became more active as my employment obligations decreased. Previously, we had developers coming into our community, building housing, depositing contaminated soil and other erroneous activity with little input from the community. As residents, we increased our voices and were able to stop some of the processes pending by becoming aware of activity in our community. Now, you are the first bipartisan commission designed to improve district boundary lines to ensure that all registered citizens are fairly located to vote. I was happy to hear about this meeting, but we were not given ample time to hear what was going on in order to properly prepare and ask detailed questions regarding some of the information embedded in your website, as well as our community issues until the last minute. I am very concerned about the proposed redistricting boundaries. The maps are not readily available to peruse. Residents should be able to see where their community boundaries are now and what the proposed map will look like if or once approved. This is as important, an important step towards making fair boundaries with everyone notified. While drawing these Senate lines, I pray all of you are abiding by your guidelines that Senate districts not divide county or towns, as well as block on border or town on border rules, which stated in your document should remain in effect. With some of the issues that were discussed on July 20th, it appears that there tends to be some of the political strategizing to weaken strong voting bases in Suffolk County. We have a lot at stake. Our schools, community housing, businesses, and other issues will suffer if we break down our boundaries for wrong reasons. Unfortunately, Black and brown communities are disproportionately served. Let's stop the practice. We need your help. We want to see more of you, not just the 2 times that I've seen you, but I know you have to go all throughout New York State, but we need you to represent us fairly, okay? And I thank you very much. Your bio seemed to state that you care and you're concerned. And you do have your own political values, but we want you to be fair to all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Beverly.
Mm-hmm. Great. Next, we have Michael Mallon.
Hi, Michael. How are you?
I'm well. How are you? Good to be here. So thank you very much for having me. My name is Michael Mallon. I'm Director of Intergovernmental Affairs at the Office of Koenigsberg President Donovan Richards Jr. So thank you to the New York State Independent Redistricting Commission for allowing me to testify on behalf of Borough President Richards today. Today, the Queensborough President adds his voice to a growing number of New Yorkers calling for a more transparent and equitable redistricting process. In addition, especially when it relates to elected representation, this process should not be used to dilute the voices of marginalized communities. As a chief advocate for Queens, Borough President Richards supports a fair process that promotes cultural competency and public engagement. Queens is home to families that speak close to 200 languages and come from nearly as many countries as those represented at the United Nations. We must ensure that there is adequate access so the message is shared with residents who speak those languages. Our immigrant communities must never be left behind. I encourage the Commission to work with local organizations to conduct outreach and confirm the funding is streamlined to do so. Queens is also a borough of nearly 2.4 million people. We must ensure we do as much as possible to reach all those folks and engage them in this redistricting process. We must educate Queens residents on this issue. The more informed we are, the better it is for our democracy. Borough President Richards and his office are here to support the commission and its efforts. From connecting the commission to the aforementioned local immigrant organizations to helping promote the commission's efforts, you can find a valuable partner in Borough President Richards. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Michael, and we appreciate the Borough President's assistance.
Yes. Next, we have John Park, then Jagpreet Singh, and then Aaron Fernando.
John, are you there? Oh, hi, John.
Yep, coming in. All right.
Hi, John.
Hello. Hello, Commissioner Mamora. So I'm just going to jump into this. I have a bit to say. My name is John Park. I'm the Executive Director of the Minkwon Center for Community Action in Flushing, Queens. We're established in 1984, originally as a YCASEC. And Minkwon meets the needs and concerns of Korean Americans, Asian Americans, and immigrant communities through advocacy and organizing, civic participation, social and legal services, and also youth empowerment. In 2010, APAs constituted about 69% of Flushing. And in the past decade, we have witnessed firsthand the growth of these neighborhoods becoming increasingly more dense and populated. And to meet the needs of the growing APA community in the Flushing area, Minkwon launched a range of immigrant services, extended Korean and Chinese language assistance and direct services, and also formed the first coalition on APA redistricting. The 2019 ACS, American Community Survey, predicts the APA community will comprise about 14.09% of the city, up from 11.8% in 2010. And 3/4 of that growth was just in Queens and Brooklyn. But for the current redistricting cycle, and I want to emphasize this, we believe this growth could lead to the creation of a second APA majority Senate district, and also a third majority assembly district in Queens. And while we await the release of, await the release of the census block data, we fully expect that Flushing will continue as the epicenter of at least one majority Asian American Senate district and, of course, a congressional seat. We also believe Flushing should continue to predominantly comprise a majority Asian American assembly district, notwithstanding some minor adjustments needed at the southern border of Flushing. The APAs living in Flushing share the same bus lines, the 7 subway. They dominate, small businesses in the area and share persistent language needs to access government services and information. And there are 11 public elementary schools alone located in Flushing, which is more than any other neighborhood in Queens. And downtown Flushing is the busiest commercial and retail area in Queens. So that's a little bit about our area. Flushing's growth leaves its primarily low-income community members extremely vulnerable to gentrification and proliferation of high-rise luxury construction, as some other folks have already testified on. The community of Flushing must be kept whole in order to mount a united front to unlawful rent hikes, displacement, like the successful decades-long grassroots campaign in 2019. The community has been particularly hard hit by COVID-19. Small business have been doubly hit, the Chinese virus, all those things. And, we're shut down with the shelter-in-place orders. But language and cultural barriers persist. And just to conclude, the spike in hate crimes added to the challenges. And we just must continue to fight to prioritize and to aid these impacted businesses and residents, and the community must be kept whole.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Next, we have Jagpreet Singh, Aaron Fernando, and then Albert Baldeo.
Hi, Jagpreet. How are you?
I'm doing well, Commissioner. Thank you all for allowing us to testify, especially thanks to the staff for putting this all together. My name is Jagpreet Singh, and I've been an organizer in Queens for a decade now. For the past couple of years, I supervised a community center in Richmond Hill, and before that, I was a tenant organizer in Jackson Heights, Elmhurst, and Jamaica. I'm currently a resident of Elmhurst. I will focus on assembly districts dividing in 2 neighborhoods. The first is the famous Richmond Hill, Ozone Park, South Ozone Park area, of course. I'm defining this area as Jamaica Ave up towards the park towards the north, Van Wyck to the east, Belt Parkway to the south, and East New York, Brooklyn to the west. Home to a vibrant South Asian and Indo-Caribbean community, they've been migrating there since the 70s, buying homes, creating families, starting small businesses and religious institutions. Some of the oldest Hindu mandirs and Sikh gurdwaras in the state are located in this community. This is a community of interest. Many members share similar occupations: truck drivers, livery drivers, taxi drivers, construction workers, day laborers, small business owners, and home health aides. They shop in grocery stores to find South Asian and Indo-Caribbean staples like turmeric powder, bitter gourd, paneer, and more. They share holidays, festivals, and similar languages. Yet this community is divided by not 2, not 3, but 7 assembly districts. The Punjabi community, from which I belong, has been divided in half by the 38th and 24th district. And the Bangladeshi community out in Ozone Park is divided into 3 separate districts as well, and the Indo-Caribbean community is even more. The cracking of this community leaves them with little representation and a lot of opportunism from elected officials who will garner donations during election seasons or come for photo ops, but not address the daily issues the communities face because they don't have to rely on their votes. This community deserves to be kept whole and have an opportunity to elect someone who will heed their concerns. I would also like to discuss the communities of East Elmhurst, Jackson Heights, Corona, and Elmhurst. These communities are represented by the 34th, 35th, and 39th Assembly Districts. Jackson Heights has long been an anchor for many immigrants. For the past couple of years, we've seen a large South Asian, especially now the Bangladeshi and the Bali community that have called Jackson Heights home, and a large Colombian, Peruvian, and other Latinx communities that made the eastern part of Jackson Heights and Corona home. Yet the way assembly lines have been split, these communities it's impossible for them to gain any power in their district. Elmhurst is one of the largest growing Asian populations. Yet dividing Elmhurst into 3 assembly districts ensures that there's no representative who can address their needs. On the state, city, and federal level, there is not a single home district office for any of them within Elmhurst. These communities in Elmhurst share similar festivals, eat at similar restaurants, share ethnic, linguistic, and cultural ties. There's been a large growing Southeast Asian community here. They use the Broadway commercial corridor for shopping between Roosevelt and Queens, but the heart of the corridor is split into 2 districts. Lastly, in East Elmhurst, there's a large Pan-Asian community, mostly homeowners and folks renting out 1 to 3 family homes, a lot of residents who are in the driving and construction industries, yet they're also divided between 80, 34, and 35. In summary, there exists within both East Elmhurst and Elmhurst 2 separate neighborhoods, not bordering each other, separate communities of interest within the Asian American population that needs to be kept together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jack. We really appreciate your coming.
Great. Next, we have Aaron Fernando, and then Albert Baldeo and Seth Slade.
Hi, Aaron. How are you?
Doing all right. Thank you so much to the commission members and staff for having this really important meeting. My name is Aaron Fernando. I am a lifelong resident of South Richmond Hill, a neighborhood you've heard a lot about today, and for good reason. I've lived here for 20 years, born and raised here. My mom is Indo-Guyanese and moved here in 1982. And I'm talking about South Richmond Hill today because, as others have said, including Jagpreet just before me, we are split across 7 assembly districts. And I can show you a brief map just to really show you guys the inequities here. I live at the bottom circle right here in the 31st Assembly District, which goes all the way to Far Rockaway and Springfield Gardens. I have many family members near me. One of my aunts lives right here, a few mere blocks away. I can walk there in 5 minutes, but she lives in the 38th Assembly District, which goes all the way to Glendale and Ridgewood. Meanwhile, I have 2 more aunts who both live in another Assembly District, again, a few blocks away from me, in the 24th District, David Weprin, that goes all the way to Oakland Gardens and Glen Oaks. If I want to have my family members call a assembly member to talk about the rising property taxes out here, the garbage piling up on Liberty Avenue, which is right here, or to talk about the sky-high COVID rates in our neighborhood in the past few months, we had the highest COVID rate of any neighborhood in the city. I cannot tell them to go to a single person. I have to tell them all to go to 3 different assembly members, which is absurd when I can walk to all their houses in mere minutes. And that's the kind of gerrymandering that we're facing in this community. We are in a heavily South Asian community of Guyanese, Trinidadian, and Punjabi Americans. It's a clear community of interest that has historically been split. And as others have said on this call, the census doesn't include all Indo-Caribbean folks. My own family doesn't check Asian because they believe they're not Asian, they're Indo-Caribbean. So many folks are not fully counted in the census. So I believe, as other people have said on this call, that we need to draw a single district that has this entire community of interest. That way I can tell my family and my friends to go to a single elected official instead of up to 7 that divide Richmond Hill. I also want to speak briefly in my last few minutes about Glen Oaks, Belrose, Floral Park, and Queens Village, which a few folks have spoken about on the other end of Queens. I was a field director on a city council campaign here. They are key voting block, mostly South Asian and specifically Punjabi Americans, many who have been here for decades. They don't have their own member in the assembly. They have 3 different electeds. It's only on the council level that they have a single elected official. And this year, because that seat was open, they had 4 different South Asian candidates running, and turnout increased by up to 200% in some precincts because of the interest gathered in electing a South Asian official. But because they're divided on the assembly level, in districts 24, 26, and 33, their interests are split and their power is split. We've never elected a South Asian before this last year, and we need to be unified into single districts so we can exert our political voice as one. So I asked that the commission give South Asians in Richmond Hill and Ozone Park a single district where I live, as well as South Asians in Glen Oaks, Queens Village, Floral Park, and Belrose, their own district, so we can elect our own members. I'm sorry for going over time, but thank you all so much for listening, and take care.
Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate it.
Great. Next, we have Albert Baldeo, Seth Slade, and Jennifer Silverman.
Hi, Albert. How are you?
Doing Commissioner Emamora and Dr. John Flatto, Stevens, Commissioner Molina, and Ross Brady. I'm glad we have such distinguished lawyers and leaders in the room, and we're happy to have you here. And I know that with a redistricting, you will do us a great job. I was just reading Dr. Flatto's book, so I feel confident that we can have a fair representation here. Now, here's the thing. 95% of the people who testified before you wonderful folks are people who look like me and read Exhibit A. You will see that we are all people that one Republican state senator, Surf Maltese, 20 years ago, called us swarthy or dark-skinned folks, and he tried to legalize racial profiling in New York State. And that is what happens when you're marginalized, as we have been, and you're victimized. He brought out that legislation so we can become legalized second-class citizens and orphans in the country of America, which we proudly are citizens of. And we are children go and fight and die for America. So that is the genesis of this entire thing, where if we're cut out, we are then slaughtered. And thankfully, I ran against him, but they kept him in power. There are these unholy alliances with vested interests and with the county organization bosses that keep us from getting our rightful place in society. Now, where does that put us? I am happy that we have this independent redistricting commission. You are a godsend. This is my 4th decade I did this. And I belong to so many organizations, I wouldn't even mention them, but I tell you this, I've ran for office in all of these communities that we're talking about. That is Richmond Hill, South Ozone Park, and Ozone Park. And there is a natural configuration here, commissioners. The natural configuration is Jamaica Avenue, or even if you want to say Forest Park up here, and I've submitted this map. And then you have the Van Wyck Expressway. This, you have the Belt Parkway, and you have Woodhaven. This as is divine and is natural and geographically compact and contiguous. And as you know, this is the very basis that the voting rights ask for, that you have a compact, contiguous, solid district that has a mass of folks. Here alone, we have enough for a state assembly district. In Richmond Hill and South Ozone Park, we have the 125,000 minimum, and it's been growing. A lot of our folks do not open their doors to census because of billing inspector phobia, where we get tickets and we are suppressed, and also for immigration. But the numbers here alone, half of this here is enough for an assembly district. It's enough for a state senate district too. And then you had Felicia Singh, who has just become the Democratic primary. She has won that primary, and she's of Indian and Guyanese and South Asian descent. So here you have Little Guyana, Little India, Little Trinidad, and Little Bangladesh all coming together, people who can trace their ancestry to South Asia. Compact district. So I ask you to just follow this. because we don't get enough health care, we don't get the education we need. Our kids can't go to specialized high school because travel is prohibitive. We can't go to the Bronx, we can't go to Stuyvesant. With those resources, we can put a specialized high school here. We can have enough medical resources, we can have educational needs, we can have a better communities of interest, relationship with the police. The city is called its Little Guyana, commissioners. The city is designated the Little West Indies, Guyana, South Asia, Punjab. So why can't we have that? It will be against the Constitution. It'll be against the denigration of the Voting Rights Act for you to withhold this. And because people are saying you've been set up to fail, because they're saying it's going to be a deadlock, and the legislators who are conflicted, they will draw their own district like it did here with Weapon. Cut us off and it goes all the way to the Valley Stream. How can that be? We don't want handouts, we don't want droppings. That's what we're getting now. We want a solid compact district. If the city can recognize us, the state can follow suit. It is because of the census numbers, it is because of the common interest, and it's because of the communities of interest that we have. So I pray and ask you to do the right thing, and I hope you don't have to see each other in federal court under the Voting Rights Act, because I know that you would do the right thing. Thank you very much, commissioners, and may God bless you and guide you in this very important task that you have ahead of you.
Thank you, Albert. Appreciate it.
Great. Next, we have Seth Slade, Jennifer Silverman, and Sarah Shea.
Hi, Seth. How are you?
Hello. Thank you, everyone, for being here and allowing us to testify virtually. It's a great opportunity. I've lived in New York for almost all my life, except for the first 2 years. I've lived in New York City 35 years, and now I'm here in Queens. You've heard a lot about Richmond Hill lately, but I'd like to share my screen and go back to you, go back to our first speaker, Amelia Ducadin. And can you see my screen here?
I do not.
Okay, let me try again. Let's do that. Okay.
Okay. Yes, it works now.
Okay, so great. So this is my assembly district. And as Amelia Ducadin was talking about, here you see Astoria, odd shapes here. This is Woodside. And I live right about here where my purple arrow is, that's still Woodside. And then this district goes all the way down here to Middle Village, Juniper Valley Park. So again, Queens, known as the world's borough, the most diverse borough in the country, and Woodside, one of the most diverse neighborhoods, is split up. I live in Woodside, I have a Woodside zip code, so I'm not with all of my Woodside, Sunnyside neighbors. We get pushed with other neighborhoods which are much more conservative and less diverse. However, we look at the New York State Senate district. I'm right about here where the purple arrow is at this border. And so far, this district looks pretty contiguous. Until then, you get these very strange shapes over here and this little appendage here. Then we go all these neighborhoods here. Again, I should be with Woodside. We're cut off from the rest of Woodside, Sunnyside, but this district continues, and it continues, and it continues over the bridge to Rockaway Park, Breezy Point, one of the least diverse, whitest neighborhoods of New York City. And again, no connection to where I am up here in Woodside. So again, like many others, we need to have neighborhoods that are connected and not this ridiculous gerrymandered little blips connecting neighborhoods. Here's another neighborhood, Woodhaven, that you've heard about, also split up. So I'm hoping that this year, with the first time with this independent redistricting commission, we get neighborhoods that stay together and not gerrymandered. And I want to thank all of you for listening. I also want to thank the staff members who have ensured that the meeting has been running smoothly. So thank you very much for your consideration, and I look forward to hearing more about the process. Thank you all.
Thank you, Seth. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next, we have Jennifer Silverman, Sarah Shea, and then Derek Evers.
So Jennifer, before you start, Seth, can you exit? Okay, there we are. Yeah, Jennifer, yes. Hello, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me. So my name is Jennifer Silverman, and I'm the co-chair of the advocacy leadership team at Sunnyside Community Services, and I'm also a resident of Western Queens. Each year, Sunnyside Community Services serves over 16,000 people of all ages in Western Queens and across the city with a continuum of programs, including pre-kindergarten classes, after-school programs, college access and job preparation for teens, English for speakers of other languages and immigration assistance, job training for adults, and a range of senior services both on-site and in people's homes. We're a member of the Mapping Our Futures Coalition, which is a statewide coalition of advocates dedicated to mobilizing the grassroots to get involved in redistricting and advocate for a fair process and fair maps. We believe that fair districts are the foundation for fair representation, and a good redistricting process can make sure that this happens. Our organizational vision is for diverse, inclusive, and caring communities where all people thrive and reach their fullest potential, and fair representation supports this. The neighborhoods we serve in Western Queens include Sunnyside, Long Island City, Elmhurst, Corona, Woodside, and Jackson Heights. So as you know, these are some of the most diverse communities in the country. Census data show that in many of these communities, more than 50% of our neighbors are immigrants. We ask that redistricting honor this during the drawing process. And as we've been hearing, many of the existing districts in Western Queens are split within the same neighborhood, which can seriously dilute how a community is represented. For example, Woodside, which you also just heard about, has 5 different state assembly districts, including 30, 34, 36, 37, and 39, 4 state senate districts, 12, 13, 15, and 16, and 2 congressional districts. This is my lived experience as a Woodside resident for the last 16 years, where my building and my backyard are actually in 2 different assembly districts. And my state senate district can best be described as shaped like a bat. Redistricting can fix that. Well-drawn districts that keep communities like these together can protect New York's immigrants and communities of color, allow challengers to have a fair shot at winning elections, and energize civic engagement. These public hearings are a great start. I urge the IRC to consider the entire redistricting process to be a public one. And please, at a minimum, include multilingual community education events, regular updates, and open meetings with outreach to hard-to-reach communities so that they can also have a voice in this process. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you today, and we look forward to see what the maps look like.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Great. Next, we have Sarah, Derek Evers, and Harry too.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, how are you?
How are you?
All right, good. Am I good to go?
Yes,
All right.
please.
All right, so I just wanted to start by saying good afternoon and thanking you for providing space for me to speak to you today. My name is Sarah Shea, and I've lived in the northern section of Richmond Hill for just over 5 years. I grew up in Suffolk County on Long Island, and I spent my childhood making regular trips to Queens for Korean groceries with my family. And as the daughter of a Korean mom, Queens was and continues to be a haven for my family. So my husband and I moved to Richmond Hill when our jobs as flight attendants for a major airline brought us back to New York. And we chose this specific apartment that we live in because we're the primary caretakers for my mother-in-law. And this is the only apartment that we could find that could meet her very specific needs. So the very nature of my job requires me to leave home frequently, which is why my neighborhood and my community is so important to me. Leaving regularly makes having a strong community that I feel rooted to at home even more important. And on top of that, I also needed to know that if my husband and I were off flying, that my mother-in-law had access to the things she needed to live safely and comfortably. So you've heard from others today. I'm also a member of the Central Queens Redistricting Coalition. Our coalition is a nonpartisan neighborhood-based effort to provide a voice to the diverse center of Queens, resulting in hopefully fair representation for all. So our group consists of folks from Rego Park, Forest Hills, and Kew Gardens, as well as the eastern part of Elmhurst and where I am, the northern part of Richmond Hill. So currently in my neighborhood in the north section of Richmond Hill, I find myself at the border for every district, for every level of government. Of my district, I'm sorry, in every level of government. I live in City Council District 32, but I have neighbors right here in Richmond Hill, just a couple of blocks away, who live in a different City Council district. I walk my dog on these streets every day. My neighbors even know that his name is Punch, and yet we still don't have the same representation in government. And this doesn't just occur at City Council level, it occurs at every level. So among the communities that are represented by the Central Queens Redistricting Coalition, we're represented by 4 different state senators and 3 different assembly members. My neighborhood and my community is divided by lines that don't make sense. So when it comes to redistricting, I think it's incredibly important that there is consistent representation across my entire community and that my neighborhood in Richmond Hill remains intact. I want my voice and I want my neighbors' voices to have value, and I want to know that we have the same representatives in government. So once again, as a member of the Central Queens Redistricting Coalition, I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to us today. And I look forward to continuing to work together. And if anybody's listening and wants to hop on and join the Central Queens community and the Central Queens Redistricting Coalition, you can email at centralqueensredistricting@gmail.com. Thanks.
Thank you,
Have a
Sarah.
good day. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Next, we have Derek Evers.
Hi, Derek. How are you?
I'm doing well. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Thank you for having me. Dear New York State Independent Redistricting Commission, my name is Derek Evers, and I'm a Democratic District Leader in Assembly District 37B. I'm also a Community Board member of Queens Community Board 5, and I live in the neighborhood of Ridgewood, Queens. And I am speaking to request that Ridgewood be made whole again during the upcoming redistricting. During the 2000 districting, Ridgewood, Queens was dissected in an act of gerrymandering meant to weaken the vote of the immigrant and largely Hispanic populations who live here. The result has worked just as it was intended. Despite being one of the most densely populated neighborhoods in all of Queens, Ridgewood has 2 state senators, 2 assembly members, 2 congressional reps, and 2 city council members. We share our congressional representation with Brooklyn, and we are one of only 3 city council districts to have a portion that crosses boroughs. In maybe the most extreme example of how weakened the vote of Ridgewood residents has become, our sitting assembly member actually lost the plurality of the vote here in 2020, and the Queens portion of Ridgewood voted 75% against our sitting city council member. Along the border where it was redistricted to Brooklyn, they voted nearly 85% against him. The results stretch well beyond elections as well. The lack of representation has led to inequities in how resources are distributed. Because we border multiple districts, our resources are often centralized miles away in Brooklyn or further into central Queens. We were one of the last neighborhoods to get city-run COVID testing and vaccination sites. We do not have a single hospital in the neighborhood. In a neighborhood that is 50% foreign-born, we do not have a single dual language universal pre-K program and not one universal 3K program. During the most recent heat waves, we didn't have a single cooling center because our libraries and community centers remained closed well after the COVID reopenings. Ridgewood has some of the fewest green spaces in all of New York City, and when COVID forced the closure of playground parks, we were without any outdoor spaces beyond cemeteries for nearly 6 months. We're also at a transit desert, yet we have some of the worst bike infrastructure in the city and have had 0 open streets programs in our neighborhood to date. To make matters worse, Ridgewood has also seen the largest increase in housing prices over the last 5 years of any New York City neighborhood. Displacement is at an all-time high, and the level of gentrification in Ridgewood is so great that it has become the subject of New York Times trend pieces, while neighboring areas are calling themselves Ridgewood to increase their property value. Yet despite the neighborhood's newfound wealth, all of our middle schools still fall way behind SHSAT test results when compared to schools just a mile away. And due to the political gerrymandering of our neighborhood, the Hispanic population is underrepresented in our community board by over 25%. Asian and Black representation is also below population levels, and women are underrepresented by over 50%. In closing, I would just like to finish by saying this is not a Republican versus Democrat debate or right versus left, but ultimately this is a moral debate. Ridgewood is one of the 5 most populous neighborhoods in Queens. It is a historically rich and diverse neighborhood, one of the first in Queens, in fact, and the current districting from congressional all the way to city council has led it to become largely overlooked. At the very least, we deserve to be a proper Queens district and not one who shares its vote with Brooklyn just because we share a border with it. I'm asking the New York State Independent Redistricting Commission to start the process of righting this wrong by making Ridgewood whole again when it redraws the district lines. Thank you for your consideration of my testimony, and I appreciate it. I hope you can make Ridgewood part of one district. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Derek. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you. Next, we have Harry Toe, Lara Gregory, and Bruce Grossberg.
Hi, Harry. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing all right. Can you hear me fine?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Hey, I guess you know my name already. It's Harry. I'm a student at Stony Brook University, and for nearly a decade, I've lived in Flushing's Assembly District 40. I moved here when I was about 14 years old. And as the plan redistricting comes closer and closer, this is a really vital time for myself, and I guess all of us, to advocate for the people in our community and just the city as a whole. Now, this is the first time in history that we've been able to come in and air our thoughts out to this board. And now that we have a bipartisan board, myself and the community at large hopes that this means that we'll have a more representative map of the place we call home. Previously, when redistricting was a purely partisan process, that led to very, very severe gerrymandering and division of like-minded communities of people. For example, let's take a look at Assembly Member Jessica I can't pronounce her name, sorry. Jessica Gonzalez Rojas of the 34th District. She has no fully intact neighborhoods. Like, her district looks like a horseshoe. Hold on, let me just share my screen real quick. Like, look at this. What is this, right? It cuts through Woodside, then it creeps a little bit into Elmhurst and then Astoria, and then a little bit into Corona, and then just the entire middle is Jackson Heights. I don't know what this, and then there's this like little blip here that's evidently there for no reason. So when communities become split, it disenfranchises voters. Let me stop sharing my screen real quick. There we go. It disenfranchises voters, and it allows for outside interests to creep in and take advantage of our communities. It also prevents us from advocating as a collective. So the way that lines are currently drawn makes it a lot more difficult for us as a community to push for things like affordable housing, new schools, and prevent corporate interests from taking over our neighborhoods. I don't want Queens and the rest of the city I call home to be sold to the highest bidder. We already have enough problems without billionaires like Stephen Ross's interests taking precedence over the people who live here. And in politics, we need to have equitable districts. When districts are gerrymandered, that's not really democracy. It's garbage. We only redistrict once every 10 years. There's no takebacks. And if this committee messes up, it's messed up for a really, really long time. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Harry.
Thank you. Next, we have Laura Gregory, and Bruce Grossberg.
Hi, Laura, how are you?
I'm good. Good afternoon. I'm Chair Imamura. Good afternoon, commissioners. I'm quite confident actually that you guys will not mess up the job, but that you will actually do a great job. As she has introduced me, my name is Lara Gregory. I'm a Queens resident for 20 years, one of the volunteers during the Queens Complete Count, and a lawyer by profession. I'm here to represent the Asian American community, specifically Filipino Americans, who have long been rendered invisible, underserved, and underrepresented. In fact, I'm the first Filipino American Community Board member of Community Board 4 appointed this year. And thus, it's the first time that the composition of the Community Board accurately represents the diversity of the Elmhurst community, where a huge Filipino American community live and work. As the pandemic continues, Filipino American doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers continue to risk their lives to take care of everyone in the New York community, regardless of race and creed. We have applauded our frontline healthcare workers, talked about their heroic efforts, but the truth is, Filipino American voices are not heard, and they are rendered invisible. Part of the reason is that most Filipino names are Hispanic, and during census are inaccurately marked as Hispanic and thus not accurately counted. Elmhurst and Woodside, although adjacent, were separated into separate districts and further weakened Filipino American voices. We ask that as the work of configuring the districts move forward, let us properly honor the lives that Filipino American healthcare workers who have sacrificed during this pandemic war by making sure that Filipino Americans are fairly and equitably represented, and that Elmhurst and Woodside are not further separated and diluted and perhaps even consolidated. Thank you, Chair Imamura. Thank you, commissioners. We are with you in making sure that we all work hard, and we will be generous with our comments. We will also be generous with our praise with the great work that you will be doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you for your work with the census.
Great. Next, we have Bruce Grossberg. Apologies.
Hi, Bruce. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. My name is Bruce Grossberg, and thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of this redistricting committee. I'm testifying in my individual capacity. I've sent additional biographical information about myself in my written testimony. I want to make a comment to the committee about the well-known fact that there are 435 members of the United States House of Representatives. What's that number, 435? Where does that come from? While the Constitution states that there must be 2 senators for each state, it is less clear on the number of members of the House. Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution states that there needs to be a census every 10 years, and that the apportionment of the representatives to each state, and indirectly the number of electoral votes that each state has in the Electoral College, has some relationship with the census. But the rest of the issues regarding congressional apportionment and the representation is left to Congress and to the respective state legislatures. There's a statutes regarding the apportionment of members of Congress, and they've been amended from time to time. In the early years, the statutes allowed the number of House members to expand in rough proportion to the increase in the population in general. However, the most recent version, the Reapportionment Act of 1929, took a different approach. Book 2, U.S. Code Section 2A says, in relevant part, on the first day or within 1 week thereafter of each 5th Congress, the President shall transmit to the Congress a statement showing the number of representatives to which each state would be entitled under an apportionment of the then existing number of representatives, no state to receive less than 1 member. So the phrase is the then existing number of representatives. In 1929, the number was 435, and that's why almost 100 years later, the number is still 435. The sentence about the then existing number of representatives is the only sentence that needs to be changed in order to raise the cap on the number of members of the House of Representatives. And the census of 1930 showed there were 123 million Americans. They had 435 representatives. The current census in 2020 shows approximately 331 million people, and they share the same 435 representatives. There's a lot of methods floating around about how to add representatives. But for example, if Wyoming is entitled to a representative, then New York should have 35 representatives because New York has 35 times the population of Wyoming. Instead, we only have 26 members. I have some more information about that Wyoming analysis in my written materials. Raising the number of members of the United States House of Representatives does not require a constitutional amendment, a 15-member Supreme Court, or DC statehood. It just requires rewriting a 1-sentence statute. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bruce. Appreciate your coming before us. So, Commissioners, I am informed by the staff that we actually are not, we have run through all of the people who are scheduled, but there are, Miranda, correct me if I'm wrong, there are people scheduled to come at 6 because a number of people did not come. Is that correct, Miranda?
Yes.
So I would propose that we break until 6 o'clock, Miranda. Is that the proposal?
Yes, and then we can get through the last block of people.
Right. Is that, Commissioners, what are your thoughts on this?
Fine with it.
Okay.
No problem.
All right. So we will be on break until 6 o'clock. Commissioners, I will see you at 6 p.m. All right. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Flateau, do we have you? Let's give John a couple of minutes. Commissioner Plateau, do we have you? Hi, John.
Hi.
Okay, great. Miranda, are we good to go?
Yes. So
Hey.
first we will be joined by Kevin Kim, then Chuck Park, and then Nisa Yin.
Thank you, Miranda. Hi, Chuck. How are you?
I'm great. How you guys doing?
All right. Thank you for joining us. You are back on mute, Chuck.
Oh, am I first? Okay.
Oh,
I
wait.
thought
Okay,
Kevin was
sorry.
first.
Miranda, who was first? I'm sorry. Yeah.
Kevin was first. I think Chuck
Kevin's
joined
first.
first.
Sorry.
But
Sorry, Chuck.
yes.
Yeah, Kevin. Sorry. Sorry, Kevin. Okay.
All right, I can start.
Yes, please. Sorry about that.
So, good evening, commissioners. I just want to quickly thank you all for giving me this opportunity to speak during this redistricting hearing. And I wanted to start off by saying, hi, my name is Kevin Kim, and I'm 17 years old. I've been a resident of Bayside, Queens for about 15 years, and I would like the commission to keep my community together during this next redistricting process for the following reasons. Near me, streets such as Northern and Bell Boulevard and Bayside have become essential cores of mass Asian American gatherings where many will come together to eat, shop, and hang out with friends. Nearby Flushing is another neighborhood that should be kept together. Small parks such as Bound Park near Broadway Flushing are a special location for those who love to exercise and meditate. Often you will find elderly Asian grandmas practicing Chinese yoga in groups, or young adults taking a light jog out in the early morning. Even in churches like St. Paul Cheongasang on Parsons Boulevard, parishioners will assemble together on Sundays to celebrate their common religion and faith. Walking down the streets of Main Street Flushing, you feel safe to be around people who share the same cultures, traditions, and lifestyles as you. You could walk into your local retail store, smile at the young couple running the shop, and know that they will smile right back at you because this isn't your first time around. You could pass by your favorite Korean restaurant and be greeted by the manager because he knows that your mom and her friends had always gone there to eat when they were teenagers 30 years ago. Even the familiar faces you see behind the street vendors, selling whether it be dumplings, skewers, or fresh vegetables, become all the more familiar to you each passing day. Throughout large Asian American neighborhoods, people are able to experience similar interactions alongside their neighbors every single day. This is what makes a strong and healthy community. And because Asian Americans are the fastest growing community and now make up a quarter of Queens, it is crucial that we continue to preserve and keep these neighborhoods who share these experiences together. Once again, I'm grateful for the Commissioner's consideration of these issues, and I thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you for being, I think, the youngest person to come before the commission thus far. So we appreciate your advocacy.
Thank you.
All right, so now, Miranda, it's Chuck's turn, right?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that, Chuck.
Sorry, everyone. Now we have Chuck, Nisa Yin, and Vishnu Mahadeo after.
Okay, go ahead, Chuck. Sorry about that.
Sure. So my name's Chuck Park, and completely by coincidence, I was born in Flushing, Queens, but I attended St. Paul Cheongasang, which actually Kevin mentioned in his comments. I'm now a resident of Jackson Heights, Queens. For those who know the neighborhood, I live on 35th Avenue and 74th Street, and I actually live across the street from the Assemblywoman for District 39, Catalina Cruz. So I see her often. She's a visible member of our community. She's at the farmer's market on Sundays. She's jogging on the street on weekday mornings. And you'd think that this kind of frequent direct interaction with my elected representative would be a perfect example of democracy in action, except for one thing. Although we live literally across the street from each other, Assemblywoman Cruz is not my elected representative. In fact, I live in District 34, and the borderline between 34 and 39 cuts west to east for 10 blocks in front of my building. It then dips south and zigzags like the spines on Godzilla's back for another 15 blocks. And this border has real impacts on my ability to have a voice in the civic life of Jackson Heights. It means that if I want to petition for more state funding for my son's school, which is 3 blocks away, I can't petition my own state assemblywoman because my kid's school is across the street in District 39. It means that if I want to demand funding for elevators and accessible entrances at the subway stations on Roosevelt Avenue, I have to petition Assemblywoman Cruz for 2 of the stations, and then I have to petition Assemblywoman Jessica Gonzalez Rojas for the next 2 over, and then a different Assemblywoman after that. In short, these really arbitrary zigzagging borderlines between District 34 and 39 create a political division where there's no social or economic division. But good redistricting can really remedy that. I think well-drawn districts that keep communities like Jackson Heights together can protect us and really promote the grassroots political participation of the immigrants and the people of color who are otherwise chopped up into different political spaces. It allows for communities of shared ethnic identity, language, religion to organize and speak with a unified voice to demand the public policies that best serve them. So to that end, I fully support your work. I appreciate the work of this commission. I also fully support the work of the Mapping Our Future Coalition. It's a statewide coalition dedicated to mobilizing the grassroots to advocate for fair maps. And I hope that starting next year with the new map, that I can cross my street without having to cross some imaginary political wall. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacques. Appreciate it.
Next, we have Nisa Yin and then Vishnu Mahadeo.
Hi, Nisa, how are you?
Hi, thank you, commissioners, for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Nisa Yin. I am 21 years old. I've been a resident of Bayside, Queens for 17 years. I urge the New York State Redistricting Commission to keep my community together. Bayside has many parks where families enjoy barbecuing and playing sports. According to the American Community Survey in 2018, my neighborhood is 45.1% Asian American, 11.5% Latino, 39.7% white, and 2.4% African American. Bayside is known for its churches, which serve as a lifeline and network for Korean Americans. Families, including these immigrants, including these immigrants, come here to build new lives, while others come to retire. The most important issues to us are safety, affordability, and education. My community, which is majority Asian American, needs to stay together so we can build the political power to address racism and discrimination in our neighborhood. I'm part of a Facebook group called Bayside Queens, where racist rhetoric runs high. When a 5-story apartment complex was considered being built along Irving Boulevard, my white neighbors online stated it was going to look terrible for Bayside to resemble Flushing. Last year, a white man physically attacked a Korean man inside of a 7-Eleven on Bell Boulevard. Last year, I also talked with my neighbors about reforming the police and dismantling racism in our neighborhood. I attended a Black Lives Matter protest that aimed to counter Blue Lives Matter protest in John Golden Park in Bayside. The police lunged at our Black organizers, punched one of our attendees, and pepper sprayed several others. The cops and the White Blue Lives Matter rally goers severely outnumbered us, yet the police still aggressively targeted us, a group of young Black, brown, and yellow people. Thank you for your time and your consideration. I hope that you keep us together to ensure the safety and empowerment of our majority Asian American community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nisa.
Great, and next we have Vishnu Mahadeo.
Hi, Vishnu, how are you?
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. In fact, I'm glad that we were able to make this happen. I'm Vishnu Mahadeo from the Richmond Hill Economic Development Council. And I actually want to just give some very key points in that I am from the Richmond Hill South Ozone Park and Ozone Park community. This has the highest concentration of people from the Indo-Caribbean community, South Asian community. And it also happens to be the home of Little Guyana, but outside of that, it is also has the housing of the Guyanese community, which ranks to be the second largest community in Queens, an immigrant community. Now, we have been gerrymandered rather, and we got the negative influence of gerrymandering because we have been chopped up in 5 assembly districts. Now, we are asking for natural boundaries. Van Wyck on one side and on the west side to the south going to the Bell Parkway, you can use Jamaica Avenue or Atlantic Avenue towards Woodhaven Boulevard. That will represent a contiguous amount of people that represent that ethnicity. In addition to that, by having this gerrymandered district, you have effectively disenfranchised voters, and people lost the appetite for voting because their neighbor voted for someone else and they have to vote it for someone else. So it has to be addressed because voter apathy and voter participation is key. In addition to that, we do not have any effective representation, be it in the city council, be it in the assembly, be it in the Senate, be it in Congress. So we need to do something about that. Whilst we are having this, being subjected to the redistricting, the gerrymandered, we also do not have basic services. Something like a senior center funded by the city. It doesn't exist in our community. And worse than that, we don't have any affordable housing because we can't make effective representation because we have to go to 5 assembly person or 4 city councilors in order that get our voice heard. So we need to be able to address these issues. Then we are being subject to very poor, and I say very poor services. Take, for instance, vaccination is happening here in New York City. Richmond Hill was one of the highest ranking vaccinated place, and we been infected. And we did not get the resources that we need until I have to complain to the governor and the mayor that we need to get attention to be vaccinated and to be able to be tested. In addition to that, we are getting...
You're out of time, I'm sorry. Could you wrap up what you're saying? Sorry, Vishnu.
Okay, very much. We would also like to get improved city services like sanitation. And I behoove the redistricting committee to give us a fair chance so that we can work together. And I thank the committee for the opportunity to make a presentation. And I thank you guys for having this last minute intrusion. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Vishnu. So commissioners, my understanding, Miranda, is that there actually is no one else left. Miranda, is that the case?
Yes, that is the case.
So how many people, are we expecting any more people to come at this point, or?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. That being said, commissioners, would there be any objection to our wrapping up for the evening?
No.
No.
No objection here. Yeah.
John, you're on mute.
Yeah, how about just another 5 minutes, keeping the record open or something?
Okay, yeah, I'm okay with that. Are there any objections to doing that?
This side of Brooklyn agrees with that side of Brooklyn. Keeping it open for Queens. Queens needs an extra 5 minutes. We love you.
Yo, Brooklyn's gonna look really bad if y'all come in under Queens next week.
We're Monday, right? Brooklyn?
Yes, Brooklyn and Staten Island.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Some of the presenters mentioned city council, and at some point, it thought occurred to me, Mr. Chair, maybe in your opening remarks, I'm not sure if you specifically mentioned our jurisdiction is congressional, state senate, state assembly.
Yeah, you're right, John.
It might be important because the processes are going to overlap. The city commission is going to kick in starting sometime early next year, but I think our citizens need to know that that's another process. Another level of government is going to handle city council redistricting, and our portfolio is Congress, State Senate, State Assembly.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I'll put that
Just
in.
FYI.
And let's
ISIS
note that
is-
Monday
is.
is New York County, Manhattan, and the Bronx.
Yes. So now the pressure is even more on Brooklyn for Thursday.
Oh, we're not Monday, you're saying?
Yeah,
No,
Brooklyn's
Monday
Thursday.
is Manhattan
Yeah.
and the Bronx, and
Okay.
Thursday is Kings and Richmond.
Okay.
Is that Monday?
Pressure's on you now, Evilise. Okay.
Yes.
Right, that's your
See,
borough.
Willis and I in the Mid-Hudson Valley, we have no expectations. It's just whoever comes. None of this competition for us.
Well, I had one other thought. That it might help to number the presenters and maybe call their number as well. I think we started out pretty systematically. I was literally going right down the sheet, but somewhere along the line, I got lost. I kept looking on all these pages because it's 7 pages long, trying to keep up with the names, and I couldn't. So if they're new people, I would perhaps even give them a number, and maybe that only helps us, but at least as a commissioner, I would like to keep up with the person's name and affiliation if they gave it while they're talking. I was able to do that for the first half, but it looked like, the attendees got scrambled pretty well in the second half of our listening session. That's another observation.
And we should remind the public, since we're still live streaming,
Right.
that even if you couldn't make it to speak to us on one of these sessions, you can submit written testimony by emailing the commission. You can go to our website, which is nyirc.gov, and submit written testimony, and we will be reviewing all of those documents that you send us, even if we don't hear from you in person virtually.
Agreed.
And also, in addition, we will be having a hearing, a catch-all hearing for the entire state for anyone who did not attend one of these hearings, these public input sessions at the end, prior to our starting to draw the line. So in mid-August, we're still finalizing the date.
I think that's the 5.
Yeah, well, I think we're right on it.
Okay. Any objection to our closing for the evening, commissioners?
I'm in
favor.
All right. Well, I think I speak for the entire commission when I say thank you to the people of Queens for coming out in such great numbers to to discuss your lines and your communities. I think this was incredibly informative for all of us, certainly. And we really appreciate everything you did. Clearly, there's enormous preparation that was put into this by numerous people. So thank you all so much. I also want to thank in particular the staff for making this an incredibly seamless operation. I don't know how you guys do this because dealing with literally hundreds of people who are trying to come testify at different times. So we really thank you to the staff. Really appreciate all of your work on this. Commissioners, is there anything else that people would like to say?
Thank you, Queens.
Thank you,
Continue
Queens.
to participate. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have a good
Very
evening, everyone.
informative.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening, everyone.
Good evening.